Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to be with you. If your kids are still in school, it's only going to last a couple of more days. Summer is upon us. The weather indicating as such. It's a good feeling. Beautiful days ahead, beautiful days currently with us. And we're hoping to inform and entertain you today. We are 94 days away from Utah football's season opener against UCLA. On the road at the Rose Bowl, not the same as going to a Rose Bowl, but a great venue nonetheless, an easy place to get tickets, a relatively friendly little road trip, or, there's 4 airports within striking distance of the Rose Bowl that you can fly down from our beautiful Salt Lake International. So plan ahead, 94 days away from Utah football starting off their season. Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals in the NBA and the NHL. We're getting a little bit lopsided. I put a poll question up reflecting that, you got a bunch of teams trailing 3-1. And I guess the other way to say that is you got a bunch of teams leading their series 3-1. But from the trailer's perspective, who do you trust? Who do you believe actually has a shot to overcome the deficit? Or who is most likely to do so? Carolina in the NHL, Dallas in the NHL, Minnesota in the NBA, or the mighty New York Knicks in the NBA, who saw
your Knicks,
my Knicks,
you Porter and Spence's Knicks and Tony's Knicks, an honorary member of ESPN 700, of course, Tony Jones.
You know what's actually really funny about that, James? So I was born in Minnesota, all right? I have no affection for the Minnesota Timberwolves aside from the fact that I think their uniforms are kind of cool.
So when you moved here from Minnesota, they had only been a franchise for a few years, right? The T-Wolves?
I moved here in 92.
Okay, so that was their third or fourth, maybe so going into their fourth season.
They were pretty new
in the NBA. So that makes sense that
I'll tell you what, NBA
as
basketball.
As an 8-year-old, in their third or fourth year in the league, you didn't really attach yourself to that team. That makes sense.
7, 8, 9-year-old Sean O'Connell had, I'm telling you, next to zero awareness of the NBA before I moved to Utah. It just wasn't a thing. You watched hockey. You watched Minnesota Twins baseball because the Twins were really good back then. The Vikings were kind of an afterthought. Because of, I guess, family connections, we were into Big Ten football and Notre Dame football. Watched a lot of Iowa Hawkeyes. My parents are from Iowa. So
no love for the Minneapolis Lakers and their dynasty in the 50s,
no,
OC?
I did not feel any connection to them.
That's the thing. Like, that makes total sense. Nowadays, growing up in Minnesota, like, hockey's still number one.
Yes.
Vikings... Well, I mean, maybe Vikings are even number one because NFL is such a big influence. But football and hockey are the two things. Twins, and then it's Twins and T-Wolves, and I don't know enough to know which one. Right now, it's probably the T-Wolves because the T-Wolves have been really good the last 2 years.
They're relatively better in their field.
But
yes.
Between when the Lakers moved to Los Angeles in the 60s and 89 when the T-Wolves were awarded, when Minnesota was awarded the T-Wolves, why would you have any reason to be an NBA fan in Minnesota?
I remember my parents took a trip out here, just the two of them, to look at houses. Then they brought us all out when they were looking at houses again, which this is pre-ubiquitous internet, so searching for a house was very, very different back then.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When we were moving, and
looking in the classifieds and the newspaper, I'm sure, is a big part of it.
I remember when my parents, to kind of integrate us into Utah life on that trip before we had actually moved here, we went to, like, whatever it was called back then, like a pro image store, and we got some Utah Jazz gear. And I was just like, weird that they're called the Jazz, and weird that basketball is the number one thing here. There was no hockey at all in 1992. There was nothing. You couldn't go into a store and buy a hockey branded hat, sweater, whatever. Just hockey didn't exist here, basically, at least from a little kid perspective. So I have no affection for the Timberwolves, even though I live there. My parents live in Oklahoma. I've got no sincere affection for this version of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I rooted for the Knicks. The only place I don't even like New York, but I just decided the Knicks were my team when I moved here and basketball was the thing. I was just like, well, I like Georgetown. I don't even know why I like Georgetown. I like Georgetown, so I like Patrick Ewing, so I like the Knicks. Like
sometimes it's that simple, man.
You plant your flag in weird spots when you're a 9-year-old.
And then as the years have gone by, you've become a Jazz fan.
Well,
right?
You develop a certain affection for whatever makes you memories in sports. And obviously, in my more formative years, my teenage years, the Utah Jazz were kind of a big deal. And then as I got a little bit older, I was able to work in environments where I saw a lot of Jazz players, got to know some Jazz players, consider at least a couple of former Jazz players friends. And so, yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
You're more of a Jazz fan. Although, sorry, in sports media, you're not supposed to be a fan of anything, according to the old school guys. That boat missed me. I can't pretend. I'm a fan of teams.
You're a fan.
Anyway. So that was just a random little aside.
We were talking about which team. You were talking about the poll question. Which team down 3-1 best chance to win?
And look,
in hockey and NBA,
there's been a lot of parity in hockey and in the NBA this year. The regular season, you had some really interesting matchups. The early playoff rounds, you had at least a couple that kind of went down to the wire. These conference finals are unfortunately getting to a point that I would say is lackluster in terms of viewer interest because, 3-1, if we end up with 4 gentlemen's sweeps here, it takes a little sting, it takes a little steam off of the enjoyment of the playoffs.
The hockey game. So the one thing that's been a saving grace is the Western Conference Finals, other than Game 4, have been all blowouts. But the Eastern Conference Finals have been pretty much all close games, and 3 of them really classic games, right? Last night, not quite a classic kind of game, but still a really close game at the end there. The T-Wolves, as I mentioned, Game 4 made it really tight against OKC. Gives you a thought that even though it's a road game, maybe with the blowout win in Game 3 combined with a really good effort in Game 4 that they just came up short on, maybe they can steal a road win in Game 5 and force a Game 6. So you at least have that. The hockey games have been basically all blowouts on both sides. Like it's been a little rough that way.
There's been some empty netters as teams are getting desperate late and making the scores more lopsided, but you're right. Anyway, who do you trust most to at least force a Game 7? If you're not going to come back 3-1 to win the series, we know that's a rarity still in professional sports, but it's not unprecedented. If anyone can do it, who do you think can do it? Knicks are trailing 3-1. Wolves are trailing 3-1. Carolina Hurricanes are trailing 3-1. And the same is true of the Dallas Stars. And right now the answer is coming in. I think most people believe in Dallas because they don't trust Edmonton's defense. They don't trust Edmonton's goaltender. And, when Dallas gets hot, if Mikko Rantanen decides to, drink his spite Gatorade again, then who knows what could happen in that series.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one that I feel is absolutely the one that could be. We could see a comeback, Game 7 forced, or the Stars down 3-1 winning that series. Because like you said, they've got the goal scorer to do it if he just wakes up. He hasn't had a great game since the last series. It seems like. Ottinger's been arguably the best goaltender in the playoffs until this series.
Probably the most important point there. If he recaptures some of the form he had in the first 2 series, then everything changes because a red hot, and he's not right now, but a red hot goaltender, a goaltender that gets hot and just becomes a brick wall, even against Draisaitl and even against Connor McDavid. There's just sometimes those guys stand on their heads, and I guess in hockey that's less of a euphemism, and they sometimes do almost stand on their heads because of the acrobatics you got to do in goal in the crease. But In any case, the one I trust least to come back is probably Carolina. I think Florida's just like
absolutely.
I think Florida just fell asleep at the wheel in the last game. They're just bullies. I think that one is an academic formality, and we'll obviously have that for you here on Utah's ESPN radio network.
We'll have to see if John Forsland has any. He'll be on at noon with you from Sports USA. We'll see if he holds out any hope for his former team, the Carolina Hurricanes. He was the longtime play-by-play voice for them. So we'll see if he holds out any hope. But I'm with you. Like, even though they got an improbable road win, a shutout even the other night against the defending champs, who've just looked so dominant since like Game 5 of the second. So since Game 5 of the second round. It just feels like the Panthers have this one in the bag, even though they have to go on the road tonight to do it. OC, but it seems like home ice advantage is not near as critical as home court advantage, home field advantage, though. That's what I'm starting to learn as I'm watching more playoff hockey. OC.
I think that's a commentary on hockey players in general. I think that hockey guys are just more compared to most professional athletes, and obviously most professional athletes have a level of focus and mental toughness that is hard to relate to. But I think hockey players are on a different level, even compared to their peers in professional athletics. I think that they're just, the environment itself is less important than what you're getting from your teammates on the bench, what you're getting from your opponents. Maybe it's because of how the arenas are constructed. I don't know. Because it just seems like what's going on the ice. And basketball, I think, is kind of the most the energy of a crowd in basketball, and the fact that there's no physical barrier at all between the crowd and the players themselves.
Is it proximity to the playing surface? Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know,
because like home field advantage matters, right, in football, and a lot of times the fans are like,
that's true,
well removed. I just think that it's a different world, right? You could run out onto a basketball floor, you could jump the railing and run out onto a baseball diamond or out onto a football pitch or a soccer pitch or whatever. You can't really even do that in hockey. You're not going to climb over the glass, and if you did, you're just slip sliding around. It just, I don't know.
That's a good point, because even if you get to the ice, you're not on skates, and you probably don't have the shoes that grip the ice well.
And I'm sure
that's your feet.
I'm sure that's not even close to front of mind for players. Yeah. But I just think that it's a representation of how significant the barrier between fan and athlete is in that sport in particular, and also hockey guys. The more we get to interact with them, the more we get to watch them, the more we talk to them or just listen to their interviews. They're just different, man. They're just built different, and I like it. It's awesome. So who do you think is most likely to come back from a 3-1 deficit? We'll ask all of our guests on the show that today, maybe.
And maybe if you want to interact more with the poll on Twitter at RealOC Sports, it's also retweeted on the station account at ESPN 700, or text us 877-353-0700. Maybe rank the ones you think.
Yeah,
send us your rankings.
You could do
you believe the most in the underdog, the team that's trailing, and which series you believe the least. like OC just did with the Stars, believing in them the most, being able to come back. Hurricanes believing in them the least to come back.
Bruce Feldman is going to join us in about 15 minutes. A lot going on in college football right now. I've got a poll on that, as well as the powers that be, the decision makers in college sports are, again, and we talked about this a lot yesterday, are kind of batting back and forth the idea of more college football playoff reform. And the SEC and the the SEC and the Big Ten seeming to have the most influence there. And Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, kind of like batting it around with his coaches. That is a collection of individuals, by the way, who knows exactly the position they are in. And they love it. I mean, Kirby Smart at this point is not even pretending to pay lip service to other conferences. Yesterday, Kirby Smart was like, you're telling me, look what happened in the in the SEC basketball conference this year. You got like whatever it was, 14 teams in the tournament, and that was all based on metrics and RPI and everything like that. And he went further and he said, I think that Ole Miss and South Carolina and Alabama and all these teams are among the best in college football. He's not even campaigning just for his own team anymore. And more importantly, he's not even doing Notre Dame or I shouldn't have used Notre Dame as the example because they made it all the way to the national championship. But he's not even doing Clemson or Arizona State or BYU or like not even the courtesy of being like, hey, the Big 12 got some good teams. The ACC's got some good teams. He's just like, I approve of whatever format gets the most SEC teams in because we're the best conference. We have the best players and we have the best teams. It's like, oh my gosh. That's a pretty significant shift. They were careful about how they spoke in terms of our house is the best house. It was always like, hey man, we got a really good thing going here, but I like what everyone's doing. You know, they're trying out west and they're trying in the Midwest, and we respect everybody. But now everyone's just like, I mean, Lane Kiffin last year.
Oh, he was spouting off every chance anyone asked him about it. He got to pump up the SEC. Not even Ole Miss, the SEC. He did it.
And people listen.
Yeah.
You're talking about Kirby Smart gets to say what he wants because he's sitting atop one of the most dominant programs, like the dynasty maybe of the current moment in college football. So he's going to say what he wants to say. Ryan Day can say what he wants to say. You're not getting it as much from the Big Ten, at least yet. It's not being, but
which is kind of interesting that we don't hear much of that from the Big Ten, but it's probably coming.
I'll tell you, the Big Ten, there are cultural differences between the Midwest and the South.
Yeah.
And communication differences between the Midwest and the South. I can
say this. A lot less brash, I guess, is the way to say it.
There's just a different style. You know what I mean? Like my early years were in the Midwest. My entire extended family is Midwesterners. I've been in the Midwest a lot. It really, like, our country, we shouldn't ignore this. Our country has very distinct geographical, cultural differences, right? The South is different than the Northeast, certainly. The Midwest is different than the Northeast, certainly. The West is kind of more of like a hodgepodge, I think. Like
a lot of transplants from all those areas.
We're newer.
Sure.
We're newer out here. But in any case, we might get it from the Big Ten, and maybe this is just a product of behind closed doors, or maybe it wasn't even behind closed doors. At some point, Greg Sankey was just like, guys, it's all right for us to stop pretending that we're not the big kid on the block. It's all right for us to say what you've always wanted to say because we don't have to appease anybody else. We don't actually need the Big 12. We don't actually need the ACC. We don't need any of these other conferences. Maybe we kind of need the Big 10, so don't rag on them at all. But as long as you're just pumping up your own chest and talking about what we've got, you could say whatever you want. And they've always done that to an extent, but now it is, and maybe it's a reflection of the political climate or whatever, but now it is just like the SEC is like, we want a playoff format that is basically just us. And it could be a pushback or an overcompensation because of what happened with this year's national championship game. Did not have SEC representation, right? Ohio State is a threat. Oregon is more of a threat than they've ever been. Notre Dame is a threat again, so maybe they're just trying to like.
I mean, Penn State also a semifinal team. I mean, they're not front of mind. They're thinking about Ohio State and Notre Dame more, but that's got to be in some people's minds.
I'm spitballing whatever ideas you could be looking at here behind the SEC's willingness and not even willingness, eagerness to campaign in favor of a format that kind of just like throws the integrity or the fairness of college football out the window. I mean, they were like, hey, man, we should get four teams automatically into the playoff just because they're in the SEC. Well, what if you have a down year as a conference? They don't even believe that's a possibility, right? And how we spent a lot of time on the show yesterday speaking about how rapidly these things change. So they kind of balled up and trashed the idea of like, well, let's do 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten and 4 automatic bids for the SEC. Now, what all these coaches are seeming to like, according to reports, let's do an expanded college football playoff, 16 teams, 5 highest-ranked conference champions, and then 11 at-large bids. And this is appealing to the SEC because Greg Sankey went into a meeting and said, our conference champion gets in, that's 1. And all those other 11 at-large bids, we'll have a shot at those. If you do 4 automatic bids, consciously or subconsciously, people are going to be like, okay, fine, you get 4 in.
Yeah, you limit. You unintentionally put a limit on the number of teams that your conference can get in when you do that, even though 4 is a ridiculous amount of teams.
There'll be 6.
Yeah.
If you have conference champ automatically in and then 11 at-large bids for a total of a 16-team field, 5 are already figured out. You got 11. How many of those are going to be SEC teams based on what we have seen competitively, what we have seen from committees, what we have seen from AP polls and things like that? I mean, Greg Sankey, he's a smart commissioner, whether you like what he's done or whether you dislike him. He goes in there and he meets with his coaches and he says, guys, this is the model we should jump behind. 16 teams, and we'll have 6 or 7 of them be SEC squads. And that means television revenue shares, and that means more money, and that means $100 million distributed to your athletic department at the end of the year, and that means that you can pay those dang kids $40 million in a salary cap, $50 million in a salary cap, and you yourselves get $10 million a year, and we're all still in the black.
And even though you just mentioned all the reasons why they don't necessarily care about winning the PR of this, they are out for themselves and they feel like they can say that now. They do. It is a PR win because it makes them look like, oh yes, we're open to complete fairness.
Yeah.
How many Big 12 teams the committee deems worthy of one of the 11 at-large or of the 11 at-large bids? We're okay with that. ACC, same thing. Of course, Big 10, we're okay with that. While secretly they're like, if we don't get 5 of these every year, it's a really bad year for us.
If you have a 16-team playoff, you're going to have at least 5 SEC teams in. And again,
and we could get all 11. We might be able to get all 11 if we're that good.
How rapidly is this moving? Well, yesterday I started there's a model that is, I guess, still on the table where if you do automatic bids, the solution to make sure that those automatic bids were fair and fairly distributed was actually something that the article I read was pushing back and saying this is stupid. I actually liked it. The proposal was that if you're going to promise the Big Ten 4 teams and you're going to promise the SEC 4 teams, they're going to have to actually figure out who gets which bid. And if you're going to seed these things, you're going to have to actually figure it out by playing. And the proposal was, even if you get 3 bids automatically as a conference, 1 versus 2 in the regular season standings plays in the conference championship game. The same weekend, 3 and 4 play against each other, 5 and 6 play against each other. Or you could do 3 and 6, 4 and 5, whatever. And then you have to win your way into the automatic bid. Now that means more games for everyone, not just the conference champs. There's already been pushback that maybe conference championship weekend is being devalued. This model was like, okay, if you're going to give multiple bids automatically, then they got to win their way in.
It's like an NBA play-in tournament, but college football style.
I kind of like.
I don't hate it.
Here's the thing: conference championship weekend is fun because you've got the distilled product. Most teams are done waiting for their bowl invite, and then the 2 best teams in the most important conferences and in, I guess, lesser conferences.
Yeah, almost all of the. I think actually all of the group of 5 conferences that have conference championship games play that weekend too. So you get those lesser ones too.
I don't know how many off the top of my head, how many of the group of 5 conferences don't play conference championship games.
I think maybe one, but I couldn't tell you which one that is.
It's kind of cool because it's a distilled product of college football where it's the best teams from each conference squaring off for what used to be a very prestigious award, something that you put on your goal sheet, at the top of your goal sheet for every team every year, because coaches acknowledge, yeah, we all want to win a national championship, but put your attainable goal first. We want to win the conference championship game. Or for some teams, it's we want to beat our rival. We want to win the conference championship. Then we want to win a playoff game. Then we want to win a national championship. The hierarchy of needs, right? That kind of is the top, the most realistic one. Yeah. And if you ended up having more football with high stakes in that weekend, I wouldn't hate it. I still would pay the conference championship games their due attention. I would still hope that the television partners would do the same thing. The primetime games, the big-time games would happen on the Friday and Saturday evening in the primetime spots. But give me a big noon kickoff of the 2 versus 5, or excuse me, the 3 versus 4 or whatever, 3 versus 6, that's also trying to play their way into a playoff. Again, I'm okay with the straight seeding. I'm okay with conference champions getting the automatic bids. And if you go to 16 teams and it's 11 at large, that's probably the most fair prospect. If you decide, well, the Big Ten and the SEC, they really run things here and they want automatic bids, at least for the sake of the fairness illusion, at least make those teams win their way in. If I'm going to be forced to watch Iowa Hawkeye football in the college football playoff, at least make them win their way in. The article I was reading, the example was that game would have happened. It would have been Illinois versus Iowa, and the winner would have got into the college football playoff, because everyone in the top 6 in the Big Ten and everyone in the top 6 in the in the SEC, they're eligible for a spot. You just have to see them win their way in. Look, Illinois, Iowa, we know that the winner of that game is not going to go on to win a national championship, but
may not win a playoff game.
We felt the same way about Boise State. We felt the same. A lot of people felt the same way about Arizona State. They accounted incredibly well for themselves and almost got Texas, right? But if we're talking about expanding a playoff, that was probably the best idea that I saw, and it's already been scrapped effectively because the SEC coaches and Greg Sankey are now uniting behind this. Let's do 5 conference champs and 11 at large.
Yeah, they're calling it 5 plus 11.
Yes, 5 plus 11. And they have to call it that because in the SEC, even the coaches, they don't know how you get to 16. They have a hard time with numbers. Arithmetic is not a strong suit.
Iowa football catching strays and SEC football coaches' IQs catching strays at the end of the segment here. Love it.
You know what?
Your Iowa family, by the way, your family that might still live in Iowa, they are livid with you, by the way. So if I'm forced to watch Hawkeyes football.
The most recent products, I guess credit to Iowa for making their offense more palatable last year, but there were how many years where Iowa was like, we're going to give you 6 points a game.
Run out the clock starting with the second quarter. Yeah, it was.
No, thank you.
It was rough. But also produced great tight ends in the NFL.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful. Shout out George Kittle. Show today and every day is brought to you by Les Schwab. Our friends at Les Schwab Tires have multiple locations up and down the Wasatch Front. They take care of all of our ESPN 700 listeners. Mention us when you go in. Tell them OC sent you. They'll hook you up with the tires, the wheels, the accessories for whatever you drive, and the pros there will get it done quickly. They'll get it done right the very first time. You needed some tires right now? It takes about an hour. So use your lunch break today. Go in, get those things taken care of at Les Schwab Tires. 94 days until Utah football. College football season is going to be a major topic of discussion all summer. Bruce Feldman, one of our good friends from The Athletic, is joining us next to talk about how soon these changes are going to be implemented. What about the House settlement? Are we actually going to get something meaningful before the season rolls around? Talking with Bruce Feldman from The Athletic next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Talk a little college football from America's College Football Insider. Bruce Feldman, a reporter at The Athletic and Fox, best-selling author, friend of the program. Bruce, welcome. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Sean. Good to be on with you.
Yeah, appreciate you giving us some time today. I don't know if you're aware of my deep, deep affection for sports lists, especially this time of year. And you guys at The Athletic have generated some really good ones that have given us great content. The top 25 players of the 2000s, one that was, I think, really interesting. Top 25 teams of the 2000s as well. Coaches. Utah got a little bit of love there with Kyle Whittingham and Urban Meyer both being on the Athletics list. What kind of pushback, what kind of feedback have you gotten from a fan base that nationwide? I know people are very, very passionate about their players and their teams. What's it been like getting the feedback from who was left off, who was ranked too high, too low, et cetera?
The toughest one for me, it's impossible to keep a list of top 25 players and you're going to have, I could have done 75. But the one where I was like, that one was tough was actually not having Johnny Manziel on there. I know he, completely flamed out in the NFL, but that didn't have anything to do with his greatness at A&M, where they had a top 5 season, which they hadn't had in 50 years. So I think on that part it was tough. You get I heard back from a lot of Arkansas fans. You'd be like, how do you not have Darren McFadden on here? He was a great player, but Adrian Peterson, another one. So was Derrick Henry. There was a lot of great running backs. It's just, and statistically, you can have a guy who had, and McFadden fits in this just like Adrian Peterson did, where he had one great year. But I think it's much different than, Cam Newton had one great year, but he put a whole program that wasn't that good on his back, and they won a national title.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive collegiate football accomplishment. I engage with these articles, these lists, probably like a lot of the fan base does. When I saw the top 25 teams, I'm like, oh, for sure, one of Utah's undefeated teams is going to end up on here. And then, of course, you read through and you're like, well, I don't know who you take off in order to put even those great, great Utah teams. I don't know who you take out of here because, a lot of those teams won national championships on the list. And it's just like, all right, that resume is even a little bit more impressive than being BCS busters or whatever.
Exactly. And that's the hard thing. There was a handful of teams that I could have made a case had some, deserving spot on there. But then you're like, who, at the expense of who? And that's the thing. These other teams beat a lot of top 15 teams. Not one, they probably beat 4 of them or so. And I just think it's we remember these as fondly as they are. But again, we've had 25 years. We've had, 25 champions. There's other teams that didn't win that, might have come in second. Maybe they were 11-1 or 12-1, and that one loss came earlier in the season. And, when they had players injured or whatever, it's a fun exercise, but it's almost impossible to not tick people off when you do it.
All right, so let's talk about some of the more maybe pressing real issues in college football and in college sports right now. Expanded college football playoff. We had the 1-year sample size of that 12-team top highest ranked conference champions get in. We saw that benefited Arizona State, Boise State. Everyone says, all right, we don't like that. Let's do the straight seeding thing. But what's the model you think we're actually going to settle on? I'm seeing this 5+11 thing. I'm seeing the automatic bids potentially for the Big Ten and the SEC. Where do you think this thing shakes out?
I think it probably lands at some point on what the Big Ten and the SEC want, which is that 4-4, 2-2-1 format where you're going to have 4 automatic qualifiers for the biggest, top of the food chain, two conferences, and then you only get 2 for the ACC and the Big 12. And I just think that's where the ones who have the most power and the most influence and honestly drive the most money, and to be honest, they're the ones who combined for 16 of the last 20 national title teams, and the big, this mostly been the SEC, but the Big Ten's had the last 2. I think they're the ones who are going to get what they want.
if you're in the Big 12, you're an athletic director, you're a coach, I guess even if you're a player, you're in the Big 12, you're in the ACC. Maybe a better question, you're Notre Dame, who made it all the way to the precipice of a national championship last year. Are you still chasing national championships, or do you have to kind of like readjust your goals because of the history that you just talked about, because of the tipping of the scales so heavily in favor of the power players?
I think if you're the Notre Dame, you've just played for the national title. I think you're recruiting at a level and you have the resources where I think you're in that discussion. I think if you're in the Big 12, I think you're the one with the longest odds, because once Texas and Oklahoma moved out, none of those other programs have had sustained high-level success. They've had some good teams from time to time, but they haven't recruited anywhere near what the teams that win national titles have. So I think that's the part where, look, we're seeing it right now at Texas Tech, where they have a billionaire booster who's a former Texas Tech offensive lineman who has thrown a lot of money to his football program. They've gone all in on the portal. We'll see. I mean, they haven't been great. They've had basically one really, really good season under Mike Leach. That was actually a long time ago. They haven't been that good under Joey McGuire, who's the head coach they have now. Is this the chance where they make a big run and can change things? I'll believe it when I see it.
Bruce Feldman, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things college football. We were told that this House versus NCAA settlement was pretty much going to be resolved by now. I think next week was the initial target date, and it seems like these deadlines keep getting pushed back and pushed back. Are we going to have a meaningful change in transfer portal NIL rules based on this settlement and the rules that are established around this settlement anytime soon?
I hope so. I thought it would have been by now, but like almost everything, it seems like with college sports, there's so much confusion and uncertainty. We're just kind of waiting and waiting. I feel like this is one of those where I don't want to say I'll believe it when I see it, because I think it will happen. I just don't know exactly when, because we've waited for a while and we thought it was going to be this, the court case in Northern California that happened in early April. And that's a while ago now. That's almost 2 months ago. So I don't know. It was just kind of, we'll see. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of balls up in the air right now, and we're just kind of waiting for, different meetings and different things, but it's just not a reality until somebody actually rubber stamps it.
Before I let you go, because I know you're short on time today, are you bullish or bearish on the Utes right now? They made some significant offseason changes with the offensive coordinator. They brought in a quarterback, which is a huge problem these last couple of years. What do you think of Utah's chances in 2025?
I like the quarterback. I mean, he was really dynamic at New Mexico. I like Devin Dampier. I'm interested to see how the offense works. I mean, as long as they have Morgan Scalley running the defense, I feel like they're going to be really good on that side of the ball. It's just, it felt like for a long time, we had Cam Rising and his health issues. They were banged up at some key spots. I think they'll be improved. I don't know if they're going to be like what some of the teams we were talking about, a little bit ago, where they were really, really good and they were a top 10 team. If you ask me now, I still think the best team in the state of Utah is going to be the one that Kalani Sitake is coaching, just because I feel like they have a lot coming back, and we'll see what happens. I know they have some off-field question marks now that have arisen with Retzloff, but I feel like BYU is the team that I think has a better chance of making the playoff right now.
How do you handicap the Big 12 in general? I know you mentioned Texas Tech and their portal additions earlier. You're bullish on BYU. There's a lot of reason to be. Is this going to be a league that chews itself up, though? Because, Kansas State, Arizona State, they've all got something coming back.
Yeah, I think Baylor's pretty good. I think Kansas State's going to be good. I like the quarterback. I know they don't have Cam Scatterboo, but I think Arizona State is still going to be really good. The wild card in this again is how good is Texas Tech with all the portal guys they've added. I mean, they got to be better than 7-6 for the money they're paying there. So I'm interested to see, is this a breakthrough year for Joey McGuire? Like I said, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, appreciate you giving us some time today, Bruce. Always great to read what you put out. And again, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, friend of the program, one of the great minds and writers covering college football in this great nation of ours. And Bruce, one of the articles in The Athletic was Bruce going over some of the win totals in college football that he is most confident that he's setting his overs and unders and that he's most confident in. He really is high on Clemson. He thinks Clemson could be an 11-win team. Their win total set at 9.5, which, of course, is higher than anyone in the Big 12s. We went over these. BYU's was 7.5, and that was like his number 2 pick for what he was most confident in a team going over. That was written before the Retzlaff situation reared its ugly head. So now you have to change the calculus again. It's far less important than the human element here, but from the college football perspective, it's kind of like what Utah was dealing with these last couple of years where everyone was just like, look, if you have Cam Rising, you're the favorite to win the Big 12 conference. That ended up being a huge if. And in hindsight, we're all just like, why did we think that Cam was going to play in 2023? What Kool-Aid were we drinking? What were we collectively smoking?
It was that hope flavor, that new hope flavor of Kool-Aid. Yeah,
Okay.
that was rough.
New Hope flavor Kool-Aid with a little Star Wars.
Hey,
there you go.
Yeah, I accidentally stumbled into that one. I was not saying New Hope Star Wars style, but it works that way. It was interesting to hear Bruce. He referenced that the question mark, as he put it, around
off the field
stuff with Jake Retzlaff. But it's interesting to hear him say he still has more confidence in BYU. And for a second, I'm like, oh, like he's definitely aware of Jake Retzlaff. That's
100%.
made national news on his publication, among other places. But he still feels more confident in BYU than Utah, even with that big variable.
Well, look, we're going to do this at some point deeper into the summer when we have a little bit more information on how everything like fully shakes out. Because remember, there's still 3,000 players in the transfer portal that can be added to your roster. They can't put their names in now, but there's a bunch of guys who are looking for new homes. And we're going to see how it all shakes out at both of these places. But quarterback, obviously, is the most important position. Utah's in a great quarterback situation. BYU thought they were going to be in one. Now that is a massive, massive question mark. But even while you have a massive question mark at quarterback, your D-line's in a pretty good spot at BYU. Your linebacking core is in at least an equally good spot as Utah's is. I mean, Glasgow and Kelly and Ciale or Sarah, they got some good guys playing linebacker down there, even though they lost the Taggart kid to Cal. They've got really good linebackers.
And you could argue those guys outperformed what Utah's linebackers that are coming back last year.
Absolutely they did. They were healthier, which is a big reason for that. But like you take Jonnu Hall, Lander Barton, Levani Damuni as like the top three, Ciale Acera, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasgow as the top three for BYU.
That's pretty even.
And
you could make the argument that you like BYU's more.
Well, from a production standpoint, you have to like theirs more, at least from recent production standpoint. Now, the upside of like Lander Barton is the best potential player of all those guys. But he didn't outperform Isaiah Glasgow last year.
He did not.
I think this year he will. I think he got into a groove the last 4 games or so.
And that's not to say that we think Glasgow's going to have a down year.
I think
they're both going to be awesome.
I think they're both NFL players.
Lander's just going to be a little bit more awesome this year.
I think they're both NFL players. I think that, if those two cancel each other out and it becomes a battle between Hall and Acera and I guess Damuni and Jack Kelly, right? So BYU, we bring up all of this to say that there's a lot of reason for optimism at BYU. When you take the quarterback situation, you kind of pluck it out and you put it in a vacuum. You're just like, hey, man, they got a better wide receiving core on paper than Utah does. They have good tight ends, including a guy who left Utah, and I'm higher on than pretty much everyone in the state, apparently.
Certainly at least one texter.
One texter in particular.
Shout out to that texter.
Yeah, not really. But, they've got L.J. Martin and Sione Moa as a 1-2 punch at the running back position. Yeah, man. There's a lot of things that you can say about BYU. Utah's got a better offensive line, and this is all based on paper. Utah's offensive line crushes BYU's on paper, and beyond that, on the offensive side of the ball, you're just like, well, now I think the quarterback situation at Utah's better.
If Retzloff is deemed ineligible to play for BYU for honor code violations or something else because of the fallout of this lawsuit, then you have to like Utah's quarterback room better, and Utah's quarterback situation more.
The other angle on this is from just a production standpoint, there'd be a lot of people who are just like, well, hold on, Devin Dampier, we still got to see if he cleans up the interceptions and that. These would be all BYU people telling you this. But we saw what it does to a team when you have good players at lots of positions and your quarterback is not there. Every other good player you have suddenly becomes worse when you don't have the right quarterback. That's just the reality of it. And by the way, that's even on the defense. Because those guys, human nature dictates that when those guys know that a 3-and-out is coming, it changes the way they play. They get more fatigued realistically. Also, there's the mental toll of it. Also, college football more than NFL football, but we as fans, certainly players as well, we are all beholden to the energy swings of the game. And when your quarterback situation stinks, or is even just mediocre, then everybody's affected by that. And by the way, at BYU, because of how complicated and ugly this whole thing is, there's going to be guys, James, there's going to be guys on that BYU roster that are walking around with a chip on their shoulder this year because they think that Retzlaff should be playing. That's just the reality. There are guys who are going to be like, he's my friend. I believe what he said here, and I think that he should not be dealing with this, and now we don't get him. And whether that makes them better players or worse players, to be determined. But,
it's going to have an effect.
It has an effect. We don't get to – the Retzlaff thing is not you're just taking his production out, because let's be honest, his production was top 7 in the league?
Yeah, it wasn't spectacular.
He wasn't the best quarterback by any stretch of the imagination.
It was good enough, but it wasn't much better than that.
It was good enough, but he was also kind of a lightning rod, like an energy guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He wasn't Cam Rising level of significant, but he was significant in that respect. And so you're not just taking his production out. His production is replaceable, if we're being honest. McKay Hillstead could probably do a lot of the things that Jake Retzlaff did. Maybe not exactly that production, but I'm talking about the mental game. And the mental game is so massively important. And that is going to be the big challenge for Kalani and Jay Hill. Yes, Jay Hill, even though he's coaching the defense, he's got to go to his guys like Morgan Scalley did how many times and just be like, hey, man, we might have to win this game. Because
we can't be affected by what the other part of our team is doing. We got to still be awesome, which is easier said than done, right?
By the way,
by what you just outlined.
Unfortunately, Utah's a lot more practiced at it than BYU is.
Yeah.
BYU, what happened when BYU was like, oh, wow, we're a balanced team now?
Yeah.
They won 11 games.
Yeah.
Utah has had how many 9, sometimes 10-win seasons without being a balanced team. The defense is a little bit more practiced in carrying the load.
The last thing I'll say about the quarterback thing before we catch break is for BYU is the big difference on the field between the Cam Rising situation with his injuries and Jake Retzlaff, who we're not counting on being on the field for BYU because of this lawsuit and honor code, is that you're probably going to have a full offseason. The Cougars are probably going to have a full offseason being able to prepare someone else to be quarterback.
That's true. Yeah, it's good.
Utah did not, because they were holding out the New Hope. They were drinking the New Hope Kool-Aid with the idea that, hey, Cam's going to start the season as our quarterback. He did last year. He didn't the year before. And so that is a little bit more of an advantage to prepare McKay Hillstead, Bear Bachmeyer, whoever it might be.
Who's the other guy? Bourget?
Yeah, don't be sleeping on Bourget.
Trayson Bourget,
okay?
Is that his name? I don't know. All right, got to take a quick one here. Big thanks to Bruce Feldman for joining us. Some rule changes on the PGA Tour. I didn't even know this was a big controversy, but it was, and they fixed it. Or did they? Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys here. Like, my dad is just fine. Like, he lives just fine. He's at the house watching the game in a beautiful home, or he's finds his way in some sports bar with a bunch of Pacer fans. My dad is doing just fine. Obviously, my dad being here is special. But I mean, growing up, like, my dad was reffing a lot on the weekend, so he didn't get to come to many of my games growing up. So when he would come to my game, I would want to play well. So with him being in the building, of course, I wanted to play well. Triple H is in the building. That might have been a little, I'm not going to say I was more special, but Triple H being in the building was pretty fire too. Former players coming out, G. Hill, who played with me for a little bit, Danny Granger, he said it's like his first time back in Indy. That's special. That's special for me. J.O. in the building. Obviously, Reggie on commentary. When you're winning, you can get people out the house to come watch you and support you.
Post-game comments from Tyrese Halliburton. Game 4 win for the Pacers. They go up 3-1 over the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. That sound courtesy of the NBA. Game 5 tomorrow night at the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. Tonight, Oklahoma City has a chance to clinch their first NBA playoffs berth since 2012. Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals is in Oklahoma City. You can hear it on 103.9, 98.3 The Fan. Look, maybe we'll get to the PGA Championship change here in a minute. The Tyrese Halliburton dad soap opera saga.
Back in the building last night, OC.
He was back in the building.
They put him in a suite. They didn't let him be courtside, which is a smart move by the NBA and the Indiana Pacers.
Look at Tyrese Halliburton, by the way. That's masterful on the mic. He answered the question about his dad. He kind of,
And
he downplayed. You said, guys.
For full disclosure, I did cut that. It was like a 2-minute clip. I cut that up so it wasn't quite. He didn't quite say all those things in sequential order. He was a little more long-winded before he got to the next thing. But just so everyone knows, but those were the main points.
You nor I are going to get mad at someone for being long-winded. A problem that we both can be accused of. But look, he hit all those points. He made sure he shouted out all the Pacers that were in the building. He made sure that we downplayed the whole thing, like my dad is here. It's the most important thing. He doesn't want his dad to be the story. The only problem I have with that is that he was geeked up about Triple H, the wrestler.
He loves wrestling, apparently.
There's way too much love for that.
Probably why one of the reasons why McAfee loves to have him on as a guest. Because they share their love. They share the love of wrestling, and also Indiana guys, Indiana stars there. But yeah, I just loved one of the reasons why I wanted to play that OC is the very beginning when he just laughed. He basically just laughed in the face of everyone saying, "Free John Halliburton, free Mr. Halliburton." And he's just like, "My dad's okay.
My dad doesn't have real problems right now. He's just watching the game at a
somewhere
different place.
Else. He's just not courtside." or in a suite like he was last night. He did say in one of the parts that I cut out, he does say, "My dad's not in jail. He wasn't in jail. He was actually sitting pretty at a really nice house," as he said in the clip part that I kept, in a really nice house watching games or wandering in a sports bar, and he's like the star of the sports bar, and he's like the star of the sports bar watching his son play. So I did like how he basically downplayed everyone trying to make him this martyr that he really wasn't.
All right, we got to take a quick one here. Hour number 2 starts. What a treat. John Forsland, who's calling the Eastern Conference Final. He's the play-by-play voice for Sports USA on the NHL play-by-play. He'll join us next, talking Stanley Cup playoffs on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. It's the Sean O'Connell Show.
Carolina starts their breakout through center, read by Jones. He'll pick it off. Nikishin sets up Stankoven near flank over the line. With a shot, he scores! Logan Stankoven! With a stinging wrist shot, he continues on a run. This young guy's on a roll. 9:15 left to go in the second period. 1-0 Carolina.
That sound from Sports USA, John Forsland on the call. That was a season-saving goal for Carolina. Staying alive against a Florida Panthers team that looks poised to, maybe repeat. We'll see how it goes. But I think that this one is all but done. Might all be over but the crying, as they like to say, for Carolina. We have the Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final for Stanley Cup playoffs tonight in Florida. Puck drops at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM via Sports USA. We're trying to get John Forsland, whose voice you just heard on that call. He's calling the Eastern Conference Finals. He was a longtime voice of the Carolina Hurricanes back to when they were Hartford Whalers. And he's the current voice of the Seattle Kraken. So we'll talk all things NHL playoffs with him and maybe even a little Utah Hockey Club, as long as we're talking about the Mammoth. They signed the couple of KHL prospects. Today it was the announcement that Daniil Butt, I think you're actually supposed to say it, Boot. Daniil Butt is coming up from the KHL, and he's on a 3-year deal with the Utah Mammoth. So a couple of guys, again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm watching a ton of KHL hockey, but when you get used to the pipeline that develops NHL talent, you're going to hear a lot about two minors leagues or two juniors leagues in Canada. You're going to hear a lot about the KHL, and he excelled at that level. So another rising prospect for the Utah Mammoth that projects out to be what they hope will be an elite forward who can help them both with some physicality, but also with the goal scoring. And it turns out goal scoring is important, especially if you've been watching this Western Conference Final in the NHL in the Stanley Cup playoffs, watching Edmonton and Dallas go back and forth. And it's been mostly the offense, the dynamic duo, and the Dallas goalkeeper, the Dallas goaltender, Jake Ottinger, cooling off after some really good series. Also, Mikko Rantanen no longer playing outside of his mind. I mean, it's only so sustainable. We talk a lot about how hockey players are just a little bit different, built a little bit different. I'm 41 years old, all right? I retired from athletic competition 3 months after my 35th birthday. Now, I feel happy that I got out when I got out because the recovery was taking a little bit longer then than it did when I was 25. It would be significantly different at 40 or 41 than it was at 35. So, 35, you're still kind of like exiting your prime. 40, unless you're a freak of nature, you're well outside of your prime. The Edmonton Oilers, Corey Perry, if you've not paid attention to Corey Perry for the Edmonton Oilers, he set a record. He had a second period power play goal, 6th goal of the postseason, and he's now tied with Teemu Selanne and a couple other players for most goals in a single postseason by a player who started the playoff run at age 39 or older. He's 40 years old, and he's skating full shifts, playing full games for an Edmonton Oilers team that's got two of the best young players on planet Earth. At 40, he's hanging in the Stanley Cup playoffs. At 40, he went through an 82-game regular season and is now in the 3rd playoff series of his postseason, and he's producing. At 40 years old, this is not the same thing as when you see a baseball pitcher hanging around until he's 38, 39, 40 years old. That's already bad enough. That's crazy on your joints. That's nasty on your tendons, your shoulder, your elbow. A lot of those guys end up with knee and Achilles and ankle problems as well. But it's baseball, all right? You have these scheduled rests that are a week long, effectively. This is not Ray Allen playing until his late 30s and just kind of posting up out on the three-point line, waiting for someone to give him an open shot. This is more equivalent to the LeBron James kind of a thing where, like, he is still playing an elevated style of basketball. He is still playing a physical style of basketball, and he's doing it at an advanced age, except he's doing it with scheduled rest as well, with load management that the NBA is now trying to change rules and minimize. Corey Perry, at 40 years old, is like, you know what? One last ride with these young bucks in Edmonton. We got to give Canada a cup. It's been 30 years, and he's doing it. And he's not only doing it, but he's doing it well at age 40. Hockey players are different, man. Really crazy. James, is there an athlete? Maybe you could use a coach. A sports figure whose downfall has been hardest for you to watch, has stood out more than anyone else in terms of, you don't relish watching the downfall of anyone, although some people do. Some people like the soap opera. It's part of civilization, our uncivilized urges to celebrate the rise of a hero and then relish in his fall. Has there been any particular athlete where you're just like, oh, man, watching the downfall of you has been hard for me to process?
Is this besides people who are on my favorite teams? Or is that including those guys? Because those are a given. Like,
sure.
You never like to see, like, for me, one of the worst ones for me was seeing, and he's much maligned since then for off the field comments that he's made. But to see Curt Schilling get old was hard for me.
Okay.
As a Red Sox fan, because that guy was so important to arguably the most important championship in the sport's history. With the bloody sock and the whole thing in 2004, it was hard for me to see him age as a young Red Sox fan.
I should have been more clear. Like, the aging thing is hard to watch. I'm talking about the fall from grace.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm talking about, and the reason I bring this up,
it applies for him too in that way from post career. That was hard for me to watch him and to learn that, because I certainly didn't agree with a lot of what he said that got him kicked off, got him fired from ESPN. Just like everyone, a lot of other people that were offended by that. I certainly was in that group. It was tough to see a guy who was that important to one of my favorite teams as a kid, and still is an important team for me, the Red Sox, fall from grace like that. Absolutely.
We got some good responses on the tweet here. 877-353-0700 if you want to jump in on the conversation. Yes, sometimes it comes with aging, but I'm also talking about like Sean Kemp. I don't know if you saw this. Sean Kemp was arrested and charged with assault going back to a 2023 incident. He pleaded down. He shot at a couple of guys. And thankfully didn't hit them, hit the car. But at the end of the day, Sean Kemp is one of those guys who was an amazing player to watch during his NBA years. And then you started to learn about he had like 10 kids or something.
Yeah. He
like 8 baby mamas, and that's not something that
Nick Cannon is the pop culture reference now.
Yeah, he was,
or it wasn't, at least as of a few years ago. Sean Kemp was the sports Nick Cannon before Nick Cannon started collecting baby mamas. Yeah.
So he went, that kind of, I guess some people don't mind that. For me, that was like, oh man, so he might not be like a super admirable high character guy, at least in my own opinion. And then when you see people getting involved in, I don't know, violent gun crimes, you're just like, oh, that's a fall from grace for me, from being NBA All-Star.
Oh, John Morant, absolutely.
To having that. So, like.
And now he's trying to get back in the good graces by doing grenade celebrations. Yeah.
I don't know that that's working. Josh Hamilton came in as one of the bummers for people from Clint on Twitter. He came back from addiction, and then the relapse was hard for people to watch. Antonio Brown has been brutal, according to the HD Ute. First thing that pops to mind. And Ronald on Twitter, I think this is one that's going to be echoed by a lot of people. Lance Armstrong, the fall from grace for a guy who was elevated as an American hero for athletic accomplishments, for raising all that money for cancer research. And he made that much, much worse than it needed to be by just continuing to double and triple and quadruple and quintuple down on the lies. So yeah, the fall from grace that's hardest to watch. 877-353-0700. You can tweet it at me at RealOC Sports. Back to the Stanley Cup playoffs with a discussion. John Forsland is calling these Eastern Conference Finals. He's also the voice of the Seattle Kraken. He's a longtime play-by-play man in the NHL, going all the way back to, I think, 95. John Forsland joins us. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Sean. How you doing?
Doing all right. Did I get that right? Play-by-play, you were the Hartford Whalers, eventual Carolina Hurricanes from 95 on. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I started in Hartford in 95 and was with the Hurricanes from 97 to 2020, and then went on to Seattle and do my TNT work, Amazon Prime, Monday Night Hockey in Canada, and Sports USA and all that. Yes, sir.
Do you have a closet full of awesome Hartford Whalers throwbacks?
I do. I have a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's funny how those colors and that scheme have become very popular now. They weren't as popular maybe in the present, but they are now.
That's what we do, right? Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and we look back and it's like, oh man, that was a cool logo. Those were cool colors. That was a cool brand.
Well, it was great. I mean, the original colors, the Kelly green and the kind of the navy blue, and then we incorporated some silver and a darker blue, and it was kind of ahead of its time, really, when you think about it. And the logo itself with the whale tail and the H and all those things, and the Brass Bonanza theme song, which was hated by some people, loved by many. There's a lot of stuff there. And the team played in a shopping mall, which was kicked around a lot by New York Ranger and Boston Bruin fans back in the day, but was a great concept that would work today. So, yeah. I think they were just a little bit ahead of the game. Maybe that was the problem.
Yeah, it could have been. As long as we're talking about branding, what do you think of the Utah Mammoth and the logo release, the colors? Our fresh NHL market here in Salt Lake City is pretty enthusiastic about it. As someone who's dyed in the wool, been around the league for so long, what do you think of the rollout and the release of the new team identity in Salt Lake?
Well, they've done everything right. It's an amazing turnaround from what they tried to accomplish in Arizona for years and just couldn't get off the dime. But it was a breath of fresh air for everybody in the NHL to come to Salt Lake, see it firsthand. The colors are fantastic. Their presence in the community is going to be second to none. Their team is young and exciting. And the atmosphere in Delta Center was incredible. I got to work 2 games there nationally for TNT, came in with the Seattle Kraken, and each and every time just loved the atmosphere, the way the fans, and I know they're going to make some changes, until they settle on maybe a new building there, but certainly to make some of the sight lines better for the fans. But by and large, it was just absolutely great and perfect for hockey, and it's going to be a great market for many years to come.
And we're looking forward to being part of that, and hopefully we'll have you on the show for many years to come. But let's talk about these Stanley Cup playoffs and Eastern Conference Finals especially. Carolina stayed the execution with a win against Florida, and we're back in action with this one coming up. Florida looks really, really good, really physical. They look like the team that was in Stanley Cup form a year ago in a lot of ways. Are they the team to beat right now in these Final Four remaining for you?
It looks that way. It looks like, they got to get through this hurdle. They have to play better than they did in Game 4 against Carolina tonight. I expect that they will. They're going to be healthier than they were in Game 4. They're going to get Sam Reinhart, Nico Mikkel on the back end. They're going to get A.J. Greer, a physical player, back on their fourth line. But most importantly, Reinhart is one of the better players in the league and provides a lot of help for them, especially their power play, which has gone goalless in the last two games. They appear like they have every ingredient from the goal out needed to win again, but they have to get there first. So we're not at that point, but should they advance, should they rematch with Edmonton, as it appears, that would be very interesting. But the Oilers, too, have a hold of the series. I wouldn't call it a stranglehold. They have a hold of the series, and now with the news coming out today that Zach Hyman's going to be done for the season with surgery, that hurts Edmonton, moving forward, should they advance. But they got to get through Dallas, and Dallas isn't just going to roll over in Game 5. I expect the series is going to go at least 6 games and maybe 7.
So I'm kind of hoping for that, with no real horse in the race remaining in the Western or the Eastern Conference. Like, we just want good hockey, and we want these series to go deep. If Carolina is going to make this a series, if they can, build a little momentum here, what's it going to take for Carolina to try to overcome 3-1?
Well, like they do all the time, they need to score the game's first goal. If they get the game's first goal, especially coming off what they did in Game 4 with a 3-0 win, they're going to come home. They won 31 games in the regular season in their building. That tied L.A. for the most in the league. They're 5-2 in the playoffs at home. I'm very familiar, obviously, with their players and their coach, and I know that if they get a lead, and the only time they have led in this series is when Logan Stankoven scored in the second period of Game 4 to give them a 1-0 lead. Then they added 2 empty net goals. But when they have a lead, they dictate how they can play and how they're strong. And they skate and they check with their feet, and they're positionally sound all over the ice. They swarm on the attack. They lead the league in possession time. They lead the league in shot differential. They shoot from all over the place. Those are the things you can do if you are ahead of the game. If you're chasing the game, it's different. If I'm Florida, I think Florida in the fourth game let them off the hook. They backed off their physical game for whatever reason. Maybe mentally they felt the first 3 games were, and it's probably subconscious, that it wasn't intentional, obviously, but they probably felt those 3 games to start the series were total domination, which they were. The Panthers were dominating the Hurricanes in every facet of the game. Most importantly tonight, it's the pushback that Carolina will attempt to get to and the push that Florida provides at the beginning of the game. They have to exude their will on Carolina. If they can do that, and it's going to come from strong forechecking, physical play, getting the puck behind the Carolina defense, punishing them along the boards, making it hard for them to come 200 feet up the ice. If Florida can do that, that's where they have the edge in the series. If they start fooling around with a positional game and allowing Carolina to skate and play the way they want to play, Carolina defends with the puck. That's how they get it done. They're one of the best teams in the league at doing that. And they're all interchangeable parts. They're very hard to play against when they're on their game and allowed to be on their game. That'll be the focus for me tonight for Florida.
We talk a lot of football on this program, and I've probably talked too much about how I think that quarterback in football is the most important position in all of team sports, but right up there, and maybe sometimes, maybe in Stanley Cup playoffs, even more important is a goaltender. Whoever's working the crease, if that guy gets hot, it just becomes impossible to score. Now, as we've watched these Stanley Cup playoffs progress, it looked like Ottinger was really hitting a groove. Maybe that playoff Bob was going to come back. When you look at this series and maybe even in the West, which goaltender do you trust most right now?
Bobrovsky. I really do. I like how Stuart Skinner has battled through personal adversity for Edmonton. He had to take a step out of the playoffs for 6 games and allow Calvin Pickard to get in there and win 6 in a row, and then Pickard got hurt, and that's how Skinner got the net back. But since he's been back, he looks like a different goalie. So right now, Edmonton has strong goaltending, which was a fair question when the playoffs started. Jake Ottinger is an elite goalie. Right now, he's just the victim of a team that can't score. He can't do it all on his own. Sometimes that works in hockey. You know, the position of goaltender is far different than I think any other position in sports, even the quarterback, because the quarterback has to throw the ball to somebody, and somebody's got to catch the ball. In hockey, the goalie can dominate the game on his own accord.
Yeah.
The goalie can really turn the fortunes of his team around and be unpenetrable. And if that happens, you know, it's a different story. Bobrovsky is a money goalie. He's a two-time Vezina winner. He's great after he loses, and really the fourth game was not on him. And he's been spectacular throughout the playoffs. And the thing about Florida, again, is they're the champions, right? And like in any sport, you have to knock out the champ. You have to eliminate them totally to dethrone them. And so they have that going for them too, and Bob has it. Bob knows that in a situation like tonight, early in the game, you know, he's going to get tested. If he's on, then his team's going to feed off of that, and it's worked. It's worked to the highest level, so we'll see where it goes.
John Forsland is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, calling Eastern Conference Finals action in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's also the play-by-play voice for the Seattle Kraken, so you'll see and hear him every once in a while down here in Salt Lake City. I know you've been, you know, embroiled in these Stanley Cup playoff duties, but concurrently, at least until a few days ago, you had IIHF hockey being played, and Team USA wins its first gold medal since 1933, and obviously we were over-indexed on the attention because we had four mammoth players, including the captain, that accounted well for themselves. But for the novice hockey fan, educate me on how big of a deal this is for USA hockey, and what kind of optimism we should carry forward for the upcoming Olympics and maybe another Four Nations contest next year, things like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the international world championships are the biggest thing for the entirety of Europe. So they play their professional seasons, and then when they get to the world championships, that's their Stanley Cup. Now, for us in North America, not so much, because the NHL, as you know, is the best league in the world, and, you know, the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's nothing like that, and the players that are involved representing the two countries are predominantly players that have been either eliminated from the postseason completely or recently eliminated in the first round. And some players, like a William Nylander, you know, went over there for Team Sweden after Toronto was eliminated in the second round and ended up playing a game or two. It's that big of a deal. And for the United States to continue to take steps like they have over time, it's amazing. And, you know, your franchise there has some of the best young talent and U.S.-born talent, the four players that went with Clayton Keller, you know, leading the way. You know, that's why, you know, fans in Salt Lake are going to be able to, you know, see these players continue to grow and provide a lot of great moments, you know, for the Mammoth. But when you look at the United States, the upcoming Olympics, the success of the Four Nations, hockey fans and sports fans are starved for international competition. For me, it's the best way that we can continue to grow our sport. It's the opportunity where the casual fan will tune into that. I'm not sold that casual fans will tune in to the Stanley Cup final. They may out of curiosity if it seems like there's some drama and it's going long and so on. But by the time we get to the end of June, I think it's fair to say that either real hockey fans or the fans in the two markets, those are the people that predominantly make up the viewership and the listenership. When we get to international play and you have Canada versus the U.S., and hopefully the world figures something out here before long, and Russia can come back into this because Russia has so many great players. It's unfortunate they're not part of the international flavor right now. This is where, you know, there's high drama and everybody wants to watch, and everybody can be a hockey fan. So we went a long time without it. It was a void. I'm glad the Four Nations kind of whet the appetite of everybody. Now we're going to have the Olympics in Italy in February. That's going to be great. And I think moving forward, we're always going to have international competition because the players want it. You know, everybody kind of speculated before Four Nations, is this going to be just an all-star situation on steroids? Is it going to just be kind of that thing? No, the players bought in completely. because they want to play best on best and represent their countries. So good on the United States and the program, which has developed to the point where now it's totally legitimate and was proven at the World Championships. And you're right, first gold medal since 1933. That's spectacular for those guys to get together and play and be a family for about a month. A great situation. And for younger players like, Logan Cooley, Kesselring, Doan, Keller, for these guys to be part of that, it's going to help their NHL careers before long, because that's just another part of growth for them under some pressure and some high level competition on foreign territory. So it's all good.
Before I let you go, as long as we're talking about growth and development, we're a brand new hockey market, as you're well aware, and I moved here when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, back in the early 90s. I came from Minnesota. Minnesota hockey is religion. I came to a basketball state, and then our basketball state became kind of a football state. And now the ownership group is trying to make this into a hockey state and developing infrastructure, not just for the Mammoth, not just on the NHL level, but all the way down grassroots. And I imagine there was some of that going on in Raleigh and in Carolina when the Whalers ended up there. And were you part of that growth? Did you get a chance to kind of see that happen in Carolina? Or was it, a different enough sports market that maybe it never fully caught on the youth level? Just tell me what that experience was like, if you don't mind, transitioning from Hartford to Carolina.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, Sean, to have in my career two opportunities, and that's one of the reasons I went to Seattle, is the opportunity to bring this sport, which I feel is the greatest sport in the world, to a virgin market. And so when we came here in 1997, way different generation, obviously, in terms of, where we're at social media-wise, which didn't really exist, the internet and all these different things, the ways you can promote a team. We had to come to Tobacco Road, and we had to bring hockey from the Northeast into the South. And there were transplants here who were familiar with it, but there were many people who had no idea and never had any exposure to the game, never even cared to watch a minute of it on television or whatever. And we came to a college sports town rich in basketball history with the three schools, with Duke, North Carolina, and North Carolina State. And what we found as time marched on was, once we exposed them to being in the arena, once we exposed them to the Stanley Cup playoffs, it was a place where all the fans, whether you're a Tar Heel, a Blue Devil, or a Wolfpack supporter, could unite and be Hurricane fans. That was the first step. The second layer of that was grassroots and being a big part of the community. And I'm very proud of some of the work that I was allowed to do in the Raleigh community, the work I'm allowed to do in Seattle with that franchise. And you get to the grassroots of hockey, which is exposure of the game to young boys and girls, allowing them to have the freedom to play a sport, which, is not easy to play in terms of the equipment. It's expensive, the ice time and all these different things. You have to make it affordable to expose them to it. And then they become great fans. The family becomes a fan, and that's how you end up growing the game. And the game will take care of itself. I think fans in Salt Lake already understand that if they've been to the Delta Center and they've been able to see, the Mammoth play. You just have to be in the building. Hockey will captivate you once, and then it'll hook you, and that's it. Our problem over the years is exposure, going to new markets, getting better television deals, being up against three major sports, which, we're never really going to cut into, but you try. But there is a place for the National Hockey League, and there's a fan base that continues to grow. And once you get a sniff of it, it's contagious, and that's what's going to happen there. You watch. Like I say, I'm watching as an outsider what the ownership group is doing there and that organization and what plans they have for rinks and developing, the youth hockey in that area. You take a look at where the players are coming from: California, Arizona, Texas, Florida. There's a great program. My son was the first 8-10-year-old, squirt level U10 AAA program for the Junior Hurricanes back in 2009, 2010 in that area. And, we started the program, and now it's taken off, and it has players matriculate to Division I and pro hockey and so on. So this is happening all over the country for boys and girls. And, that's just part of it. So you're just on the ground floor of something really exciting. It's going to be great to watch.
It will be. Appreciate your insight on that topic and on everything else we had a chance to discuss. Have a great call the rest of the way, and hopefully we chat again soon.
Yeah, anytime. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
John Forsland, Sports USA NHL play-by-play man, calling Eastern Conference Finals. And again, he was the voice of the Carolina Hurricanes. Before that, the Hartford Whalers, now with the Seattle Kraken. So, as he mentioned, twice he's been part of the new wave of hockey, first in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then, of course, in Seattle, Washington. And the Kraken, as much as it pains me to say, I like the name, I like the branding, I like the logo. They've done some cool stuff. I like their rollout better than the Vegas Golden Knights. I felt like their in-arena thing in Vegas, they do a great job of, but I felt like they missed an opportunity. Golden Knights is just okay for me. I like their Gila Monster mascot. That's kind of cool. They were so spoiled rolling out a team that immediately was a Stanley Cup contender. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the NHL certainly wised up and made it a little bit more difficult for expansion teams to be successful right away after that. Seattle certainly still had some success. I'll say this about the Golden Knights: their gold uniform, their gold sweaters, look
like the actual
nice.
Shimmery gold.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
All right. Okay. You can say nice things about your enemies. That's fine. We finally have a proposed solution to the problem that may be the number one thing on James Peterson's mind right now. Patch swapping. You don't know what patch swapping is? I'll tell you next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Live Night Events presents the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City's Granary District. You can find more information at ESPN700sports.com. James, your nightmare is over. Patch swapping, we finally have a solution. Do you know what patch swapping is?
Oh, yeah, that terrible problem. No, you're going to have to tell me what patch
I didn't know about this.
Swapping is.
I've been out of the trading card business for a long, long time.
I see. Trading card related. Okay.
It is trading card related. So you're familiar with the brand Upper Deck?
Yes, of course.
So a lot of Upper Deck's like best cards, most valuable cards, and you've seen these drops. People will rip some packs, and there'll be like some patch. They'll put like a jersey or a like a uniform piece in the card. You've seen these things?
Yeah.
Like they'll have the foil, they have the signatures, they have all this great stuff. Apparently, and I did not know this was a problem. Apparently, there's like a black market where folks will find a desirable player, a patch card, but not all patches are created equal. I did not know this.
Oh, so they're as unique as the trading cards value-wise. Okay.
So, like, if you have, let's say you have a Utah Mammoth patch, right? And it's just a sweater patch from the road uniforms. It's just going to be white. It's still a patch. It's still authenticated, and it's still actually part of a game-worn uniform. That's what they do these things for. But I guess in the collector community, that's not quite as desirable as having like a chunk of the logo, or maybe like in sports where they wear Nike jerseys where they'll have the swoosh on there or something like that, little chunk of the number, whatever, because these are actual sweaters, jerseys, uniforms that are chopped up and put into the cards. I guess there are people out there who will perform surgery on these trading cards, and they'll take out like the undesirable, just plain white, just plain black, just like solid color patch, and they'll put something else in there that, of course, they've just purchased at like a store, but it's got like the Nike logo on it, or
fake
it's got
patches.
They put counterfeit patches in the real patch cards.
Because the real patches, if I'm following you right, are the actual game worn by a player.
Yes.
They're buying them from the team store and putting the same patch,
the same size patch, but they're like, I have like this one is now it's just not just black.
Thank you for giving me something to be up in arms about.
Now you have to worry about
I had no
this.
idea about this.
You can air a grievance on Friday about it. So like, Victor Wembanyama has a patch, but if it's just black mesh from his Spurs jersey, it's not as appealing. So what they'll do is they'll go find like a little more appealing patch, and they'll put that in there. I have no idea.
The miniature Spur logo on the shorts or something. Yeah.
I have no idea how intricate this process has to be in order to make it look authentic, not damage the card, etc. But Upper Deck, the trading card company who does a lot of this, or who produces a lot of these cards, they're now in the pack. If you get a patch card, it's going to be sealed in a hard case.
Oh.
It's going to be given a serial number. It's going to be like they've completely gone above and beyond. They've taken
try faking this.
Yeah, they're basically trying to make this counterfeit proof for their collectors, because that's how big of a problem this became.
Crazy. It's like when they had to put the intricate watermarks on $100 bills,
which makes
and
sense.
Staining and stuff. They're having to do something like that for these patches. That's wild.
If it becomes a big enough problem, which, counterfeiting $100 bills kind of makes sense, James.
That might be a problem.
It's like if you're somebody out there who's just like, wait, you're telling me I could just get special ink and special paper and I can make my own $100 bills, and I can just print up for the low price of like 1 cent a piece. I can just print up a bunch of Benjis. that it makes sense to me that became a big enough problem that the United States Treasury had to counter that with measures of their own. I was blown away when I found out that this is a big enough problem in trading card worlds that the company who actually manufactures the card was like, we need to take some measures, some special measures, which means, of course, investing money in stopping the counterfeiting process. That's how ubiquitous this counterfeiting was. Patch swapping.
Man, I had no idea. But I'm up in arms about it now,
You
OC. I am joining the crusade against all these, filth of the earth, scum of the earth, patch counterfeiters. How dare you?
What a weird business to get yourself into.
Also,
whatever happened to just being a drug dealer? All right.
Also, we touched on just briefly how difficult it is to counterfeit money now. How easy until now. Does that sound like it probably was to like that? We got that Britton Covey jersey behind you on the wall there. I'm just gonna snip off that Pac-12 logo, put it in some trading cards, and here you go. That seems like such an easy thing to counterfeit. I'm not surprised it's become.
But they're like in the card though. It's like it's not just like a patch thrown in the pack.
Oh, it's in the card.
It's like part of the card.
Okay, well that's not. Never mind.
There's like a window.
I missed that part.
Yeah, there's like a window where you like have to. I mean, and look, this is one of those. I went through a phase in my life, and I probably still would be in that phase if I had more free time. But children take that away, and it's fine. But like, there's a lot of documentary style shows on life in prison. Like Locked Up, Gangland, all these shows that are just like trying to give you like knowledge about what it's like on the inside. And one of the things that I found so fascinating and also so incredibly frustrating is how many really high level schemes and plots and like codified language and all these things that these incarcerated individuals come up with to smuggle things into the prison, to hide things from the guards. Like, you got to be smart to pull some of this stuff off. And I was always like, how did you end up in prison for 25 years if you were that smart? Why didn't you just apply your genius to something productive? Because I could never have figured out how to do what these people are doing. And they figured it out in prison. It's like, if you just take that level of intelligence and problem solving and you apply it to something that actually matters to society, then boom, you're a successful individual. If you are so skilled at like counterfeiting trading cards that patch swapping has become a source of income for you, just like apply that level of creativity, intelligence, ingenuity into a real business, man. You'll be fine. It drives me nuts when I see people taking their intelligence and applying it to stuff like this. Anyway.
Yeah, but no one would have let me into college, whatever.
Okay.
So I guess I'll have to do this. Yeah.
Like, go work for Upper Deck. Go work for the trading card company.
Maybe they just hired him. Maybe that's how.
Jack Abagnale. You know who that is, right?
Yes.
Catch Me If You Can.
Love that movie.
It's a great movie. You ever listen to the real Jack Abagnale, like, do speeches or anything?
I have not.
Talks?
I'm going to have to look that up.
You got to look it up. He's a genius, and he committed a bunch of high-level financial crimes, and then it was just like,
and the FBI hired him, right?
Like,
or the SEC or somebody?
I'll show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And then you could pay me. Like, he figured it out backwards. Just do it in the first place. Anyway, patch swapping is no longer something that you have to lose sleep over, at least with Upper Deck cards.
This seems like if Jack Abagnale was born in the 2010s, he would be a patch swapper.
He'd be a patch
not
swapper.
A check, obviously not a check forger.
Right.
He would be a patch. It seems like there's some correlation between the two skill sets.
Like, I don't think you could fake what he faked back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a pilot. Just be like, what? No. It's easier to fly a plane now than it used to be because you just push buttons on the computer. But, like, everyone's on social media.
Yeah.
They can just be like, Jack Abagnale. You're not a pilot, dude. You're a personal trainer. I see it on your Instagram account. It's like, dang it.
He is if he puts pilot in the bio.
I guess.
OC.
I guess.
Puts a little they probably got the pilot wings emoji. I haven't looked for that, but puts that in the bio. Golden. There's my credential.
All right. Got to take a quick one here. We got another great answer on the fall from grace for an athlete that bothered you most on our text line. And it's not just our texters, not just 1624 that feels this way. It's also Terry Bradshaw. We'll get to that on the other side. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Eight seven seven 353 What professional athlete's fall from grace was hardest for you to watch? Sean Kemp was at one time one of the more entertaining guys to watch in the NBA. He's had some run-ins with the law since then. Antonio Brown was brought up as an example of this. Lance Armstrong brought up as an example.
I can't believe I didn't think of Lance Armstrong when you asked me before. That's still rough because of all that he tried to embody, the cause that he tried to embody, that he said, I beat cancer and look what I can do since I beat cancer, and then it all ended up being a lie. Like, that's still rough.
He's going to go down when it's all said and done, right? When 40 years from now people are talking about Lance Armstrong, he's going to have a very, very complicated legacy because of his greatness, but also the fact that he lied for so long, was exposed as a drug cheat, and then, like, that I'm totally fine with dragging somebody for lying about being a drug cheat. I would lead that charge probably. He did, and unfortunately based on lies, he did raise hundreds of millions of dollars for cancer research.
Yeah, the money's real.
Money's
not a lie.
He enriched himself fabulously along the way. But he did raise a lot of money for cancer research, which is, even if you're a liar, is a good thing to do. Right?
It feels tainted though, even though
for sure it's tainted.
Even though they've absolutely, like, the money itself from an outside perspective feels tainted, even though they've absolutely used it for great things and to further cancer research, and people are living a lot longer who have had cancer. They're surviving a lot more in part because of that. It still feels tainted.
If somebody comes up with a cure for cancer, and I know that's the wrong way to say it because you probably have to come up with cures for cancers.
Yes,
they're all so drastically different.
They're all different diseases, absolutely.
I wouldn't care if that money came from, like, a drug cartel.
Yeah.
I mean, I would prefer that it came from governments. I would prefer that it came from, like, I don't know,
generous donors,
philanthropists, or whatever. But in a case like that one, I'm kind of like the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
If Lance Armstrong, like, by all accounts, he's kind of a jerk too, right?
Yeah. We knew that before. We knew that before we knew it was all a lie.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we knew that even when we were questioning whether he was blood doping. But, like, and I don't know if his money, if we could actually trace any of the funds that have been towards, like, even the development of a drug that prolonged life or whatever. But if that money raised actually did help improve the lives of cancer patients, then I'm kind of like, I don't care about you lying for that thing. I care about the integrity of sport. I still do.
Yeah.
Also, everyone else in your sport was doping.
It's like this. It's very. There's a lot of parallels with baseball, with Barry Bonds and that steroid era and blood doping in cycling. Absolutely.
But that fall from grace was so drastic because he lied for so long.
And he was so adamant that, going back to the baseball analogy, I know cross sport analogy, blah, but Rafael Palmeiro in baseball wagged his finger at the congressional hearing. I have never done steroids ever. Yes. He was doing steroids for a long time.
When you
Lance Armstrong did that, but yes, pun intended, on steroids.
Yes. When you double down or triple down or quadruple down, or you just keep going layers and layers and layers deep, when you're sitting down with Oprah and being like, of course I never, like, it makes people think you're a sociopath.
Yes.
When it comes out. And look, I had this happen the other night at home, James. I'm already, traveling.
That's a daily thing, though, right? Where people thinking you're a sociopath at home.
I made this mistake. I made the Lance Armstrong mistake, okay? I brought home some stroopwafels.
Okay.
When I was on a layover at the Amsterdam airport on one of my trips, okay? I got the stroopwafels. I like them. The wife likes them. The kids like them. We were down to the last one. They're 3 for like $10 or whatever, right? We're down to the last package. We're down to the bottom, okay? We had put the kids to bed. My wife was, I don't know, in the shower or something. I see that there's a couple stroopwafels left. I ate them, okay? My wife comes out, and she goes to find a stroopwafel treat before bed, and she's like, did you just eat my last? Because, of course, when I bring things home, I'm like, these are for you.
Yeah, they're for her.
Even if they're kind of for me.
Yeah.
These are for you. And she's like, did you eat my last stroopwafel?
Ooh, cardinal sin, OC.
And I was like, yeah, I did. Sorry. She's like, wait, how many were there? And I was like, I just ate one. I don't know why I lie about something so stupid, but I'm like, there was one left. I ate it.
You could tell she was not happy about it, so you wanted to lessen the
I was feeling a little
lessen
sheepish.
the ire, yeah.
Feeling a little sheepish, a little embarrassed
Yeah.
about eating multiple stroopwafels, like finishing off the box by eating more than one. That's like you're double bad. And then I tripled down
maybe
on being
if
bad.
maybe you're like subconsciously like, that's kind of like a slob would do that. I'm not a slob.
Yeah, I'm
so
not.
I only did
I'm
one.
like some gluttonous slob. I just
had one.
There's one,
Not
she's
two.
and then we sit down and we start watching like a show or something. She's like, "Wait, seriously? There was only one left?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's only one."
You're like, just drop it, okay?
And she's like, "I swear there was more than one."
Oh no.
I'm like, "There's one left." She goes, "Really? You promise?" I'm like, "There's one."
You didn't say the words I promise. Good for you.
and then she goes, "There's more than one." And finally, after lying about it for like 5 minutes, I'm like, "All right, fine. I'm embarrassed. I ate more than one." And she was just like, "What is wrong with you? Why would you lie about something like that? What else are you lying about, you psycho?" And I'm just like, I just felt bad. So I did the Lance Armstrong thing with treats at the house. Imagine doing this with your life's legacy. Like with your core identity as a human being, you're just like, "No, I totally don't take steroids. I would never do any of that." I felt stupid about it for 10 minutes, 5 minutes with stroopwafels.
Psychopath, OC.
Seriously.
What's to pay off the tease? Terry Bradshaw's mad at Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, sorry.
Right? Yeah.
What? We were
And he talked about it on a podcast.
Yes. The Aaron Rodgers came in as an answer. The fall from grace that is hardest for people to watch.
Absolutely. He has certainly fell from grace.
1624 says, less than 10 years ago, Aaron Rodgers was one of my favorite players in all sports to watch. Now everyone just wants him to go away. Terry Bradshaw went on a radio show and was like, Pittsburgh being interested in Aaron Rodgers is a joke. You're going to sign him for 1 year? He had a great line, which only old guys can get away with. He said he needs to go to California and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there.
It's so cute.
Which is a great visual of Aaron Rodgers like actually sitting in a dark tent chewing on bark and whispering to like some like I could see Aaron Rodgers doing that. So a former Steelers great, a Hall of Famer, is like, I don't want them to sign him.
He said it's not the Steeler way to sign a quarterback for 1 year. A 1 year rental is not the Steeler way.
But it is going to be, it seems like, because all the insiders, Ian Rappaport and Schefter and all these guys are saying this is going to happen.
Rodgers himself on a podcast apparently hinted at it. Was it yesterday?
Which is, again, then what's the holdup?
Just do it then.
Your new team is in OTAs already, and you're going to be the guy that's just like, hey, everyone talking about me still? And he probably is going to eat the last 2 stroopwafels.
And say there was only one. Like a psychopath.
Yeah.
You know who'd be great? Who also probably shares this feeling of I hate the fall from grace of Aaron Rodgers? Known Jets fan, Josh Newman.
You mean our next guest? Josh Newman is going to join us because the Utah Jazz, the NBA draft is coming up. We've been talking to people from the markets where the top 5, 6, 7-ish draft prospects are coming from. Well, one of those guys happens to be a Texas Longhorn. And guess who was covering the Longhorn basketball team and the Longhorn football team and all the Longhorn athletics? Our old friend Josh Newman. So we'll get some Trey Johnson insight from him next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Push ahead to Trey Johnson. He wants to shoot it. Got it. Trey Johnson.
Stop by DJ though. Texas going back to the well on the curl, the down curl.
And Trey Johnson loving it. Got it to go. Last gasp for Texas. 20 seconds to play, down 5. Johnson step back 3. Of course he did.
Oh, some Trey Johnson highlights. He had a career high 39 points in that game against Arkansas late February. That sound courtesy of ESPN. Trey Johnson currently ranked 6th on ESPN's NBA draft big board. Of course, your Utah Jazz are picking 5th, assuming that they keep the pick. We've been going around talking to people who were closer observers to the top prospects in this NBA draft during their college days. Josh Newman, an old friend of the program, happens to be more of a Texas insider than you're going to find in Salt Lake City, and he's going to give us some Trey Johnson insights. Josh Newman, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Oh, see, I really appreciate you having me. How are you?
Doing all right. So Trey Johnson, is he worth number 5 if that's where you're picking?
In this draft, I mean, probably once you get past the first 2, maybe 3 picks, I mean, you're trying to decide what to do. You know, it's interesting. He comes from this pretty, high-level high school pedigree, and the early comparison to Trey Johnson was Kevin Durant, whether that's fair or not, right? He's this big, lanky, skinny, sort of, prolific jump shooter. Doesn't really get to the hole super duper well, but he can really shoot it. And we're going through this season, and you're watching him, and he was very, very good on a team that was older, right? With the transfer portal, you're looking to get old and stay old. But when you have the opportunity, if you're Texas, to recruit this kid, they successfully, recruited this kid. And you're watching. The thing that sticks out is the maturity. And he's unafraid. He's mature. He knows where he wants to. He knows where he wants to get on the floor. But the more you watch, doesn't play great defense. Kind of selective in when he wants to defend, and maybe he settles too much with his jump shot. Right? You would like to see him grow up a little bit in terms of getting to the rim, but the ceiling is very, very high.
So that ceiling thing is something we always talk about with pro sports prospects, and getting a player to that ceiling, you got to find the right fit. You got to make sure that you have the right communication style for that particular individual. Hearing you say that the maturity is something that really stands out, I think that's something Jazz fans are going to like. The unwilling or the lackluster defensive willingness is something. Do you feel like it could be coached? Is that just like hey, we didn't really bring you here to be like a shutdown defender? And obviously these young guys are not at this point what they're going to be eventually if you guide them in the right direction. But do you get the sense that because of, that maturity maybe that you already referenced, and because of the fact that he is going to grow and he's going to understand that, he's on a team, if it's the Jazz or somewhere else, that might expect him to play more both sides of the ball? Is that something that you could coach into a Trey Johnson because he has the physical traits?
I think so. The more games you watch, right, the writers talk to each other, and we're talking about what we're looking at. It's like he was the best player on the floor, right? So you're not, they weren't taking this kid off the floor. Like, they needed him on the floor to win basketball games, right? He led the SEC in scoring at like 19.7 or like 19.8 a game. You weren't taking him off the floor. So he knew no matter what he did defensively, like, they were not taking him off the floor. To your point, right, we're talking about, going to the NBA, professional, again, the maturity was like very evident from even the first time that we spoke to him back in September during the preseason. You would think that, he'll get with adults and pro coaching, and they're going to hold him accountable. Yes, like the defensive part of this is very coachable, and I would expect him to really turn into a two-way guy. He did not have to do that this year at Texas, but he will have to do that if he wants to get on the floor and stay on the floor at the next level, I think.
As you're well aware, we get real obsessed with traits when we're talking about, like football prospects and the combine and whatnot. And I think this is the first year I actually paid closer attention to the NBA scouting combine. He turned in a 37.5-inch vertical leap, and I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then I was like, wait, that's amazing for NFL guys. I don't even know how amazing that is for NBA guys. But when you evaluate his athleticism, quickness, traits, vertical, all that kind of stuff, is he a guy that you see projecting out positively at this next level?
He never struck me as like, I don't think he's like a plus athlete. He's certainly not like a freakish athlete. And look, neither was Durant, right? Kevin Durant is not this freakish, end-to-end athlete. He's not great laterally. His, quickness wasn't always there. And that it's kind of the same thing with this kid. Now, you can overcome that with good footwork and basketball IQ and savvy. And he was able to do those things at the SEC level this year. I don't know that he's like automatically or overnight going to turn into, this plus athlete who's going to overwhelm you. And, it remains to be seen if he can turn into this like downhill guy who like really gets to the rim and draws contact. You didn't see him like getting downhill, drawing contact, trying to overwhelm people with his athleticism. Certainly not with his physicality. But again, the stuff that he lacked, he made up for with what he does well. And the stuff he does well is very, very effective.
We're talking a little former Texas Longhorn Trey Johnson with Josh Newman here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Some of the latest mocks showing Johnson projected as the number 5 pick of this draft coming up in about a month. And, of course, that would land him in Salt Lake City with the Utah Jazz if that's how it plays out. Should the Jazz as an organization be vetting whether or not a guy would like living in Salt Lake City? It's something that you have to talk about in the NBA in particular. You're a guy who came to Salt Lake City, seemed to like it here, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. It doesn't seem to be every NBA player's cup of tea, as we found out with guys like, Donovan Mitchell, who seemed to like it at first and then kind of soured on it. And even Gordon Hayward, who obviously looks a lot more like the general population here. He got out when he could. Should the Utah Jazz be interviewing these guys, talking to these guys, vetting out these guys and saying, do you want to be in Salt Lake City?
I mean, sure. I mean, if you're Danny Ainge and, the hierarchy there, of course, you're going to vet everything and everyone and everybody in this kid's life and the kid himself. And, the beauty of a rookie contract is, you draft a guy, but, this isn't free agency, right? There's really no choice. Like if he gets drafted by the Utah Jazz or wherever he gets drafted by, like that's where he's going to end up. But to your point, this kid is, and again, I'll go back to the maturity. He's not a complainer. Like he just, he put the work in and he's in the gym. You didn't hear much about him. Well, you didn't hear anything about him, causing trouble. Like he goes to practice, he goes to the gym, he goes to eat, he goes home, rinse and repeat. And, he's a worker. That's all you heard about this kid for 9 months on campus. Wasn't going out like late at night, wasn't doing any of that stuff. He was very focused on business. And again, strikes me as the sort of kid who has the maturity, whether he wants to be in Salt Lake City or not, he's going to put on a face and he's going to do the best that he can. And that's just what it is. If the Jazz were to land with this kid at number 5, you could do a lot worse in terms of like mental makeup and maturity and just knowing that it's a business and doing what you have to do from that end of things. The basketball stuff is one thing, but the off the court stuff is quite another thing in a lot of cases. Jazz fans are not going to have to worry about this kid in terms of his mental makeup and coming to work every day to work.
All right. Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Ryan Smith, they call you and they say, hey, it's been a while, Josh Newman. We haven't talked. And this tanking thing didn't really work out for us. We got pick number 5. Next year's draft is really, really good too, though. We do have some draft capital. Maybe if we could get up to 3, we're not going to get Cooper Flagg. We're not going to get Dylan Harper. Maybe we can get Ace Bailey if we trade up to 3. I mean, they have options here. What would you do if you're the man in charge with this draft, with this number 5 pick, and then moving forward and I guess projecting all the way out to next year, because you're not going to be great as a team again.
Yeah. I mean, I would keep building capital and getting all the capital that I could. Now, to your point, if you thought you were close, if you thought you could be a playoff team or make a playoff run in the Western Conference, maybe you take some of that capital and you try to bring back assets in place of that capital. They're just not close enough. So, whatever you want to do at number 5, I would not be trying to make crazy moves to get up to number 3 or number 2 or whatever. I would take your pick at number 5. That's another young piece, whether it's Trey Johnson or BJ Edgecombe or somebody else. That's another young piece. You keep building pieces. You hold on to the capital that you have accrued under Danny Ainge. And yeah, right, the 26th draft is going to be, at least on paper, it's supposed to be stronger. I would stay the course right now if I'm the Jazz and Danny Ainge.
Are you a believer that Cooper Flagg is going to hit the ground running in the NBA?
I didn't think that he would be so prolific the way he was at Duke. I did not think he would have the type of season that he did. So I can't sit here and say he's not going to hit the ground running. I'll say this. I think Dylan Harper is sort of a generational point guard talent. If I'm starting a team, I would want Dylan Harper in my backcourt instead of Cooper Flagg. That's just me personally.
Interesting. All right. I don't know if this is a good thing or not to ask right now, but how are you feeling about your Knicks?
I thought we'd get through this without having to bring this up. No, it's been it was a fun 10 days with the Celtics series. They got over the hump and people were very, very excited. And it hasn't been this way in 25 years. And the way they lost game 1 against the Pacers was, that was bad. They stole game 3 and everybody got kind of excited again. And then reality sort of set in last night. So they're down 3-1. We'll see what the Garden crowd has to bring tomorrow night, but it's not looking good, right? But it was fun for a minute. So, we'll see how it all plays out.
It's been a while since we last spoke. Have you found a good bagel spot in Austin yet?
No, but we've got we've got the 1 or 2 spots that are like pretty reliable. It's weird, man. You can, I've lived in Utah, I've lived in Texas now, and I'm sort of convinced now you can find pizza anywhere. For some reason, you can find pizza anywhere. You might have to look for it, but you can find it. But you just cannot find bagels anywhere that like live up to the standard that I've set in my own mind. This is a new thing. So maybe I need to change it, change my standard. But that's sort of where we are with bagels right now.
But you're in like the barbecue capital of the world. So does that compensate, or are you still just like, no, I'd rather have great bagel than great barbecue?
It's funny. I'd rather have great bagels personally. And yes, we're in the barbecue capital of the world here. We've had some tremendous barbecue, but it gets old after a while. You can't have barbecue every third day or every week. You kind of have to make that like a once in a while thing, or else you're going to have a weight problem. I mean, personally, I would rather have some bagels over some barbecue.
Well, I think that maybe you could marry the two. You could go viral for making delicious barbecue brisket bagel sandwiches or something,
That's something to think about. I am between jobs right now, so I may have to workshop that. That might be a good time waster.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, we know that's not ever a good place or a fun place to be. You got a lot of fans here on this station. You got a lot of fans here in Salt Lake City, so we'll be paying attention wherever you land, and we're sure that'll be on your feet somewhere. Hope you and the family are well, Josh, and always appreciate your time and your insight.
Thanks for having me, OC. Appreciate it.
Really big fan of Josh Newman. He's great. He was great when he was here on the Utah beat. It is a cold world in sports media sometimes, but he's a talented, intelligent guy. I have no doubt that Josh is going to end up in a really good spot, and we'll be rooting him on and hopefully finding excuses to bring him on, like this one. Trey Johnson he's appearing for the Utah Jazz in a lot of mocks now. And we know how mock drafts are. You put out a mock draft, and then you're just like, well, I can't 2 weeks from now put out the same exact mock draft. So I got to shuffle some things. You're not shuffling 1. You're not shuffling 2. And so 3 on down is where people are making their adjustments. And so you've seen Con Knippel projected to the Jazz. You've seen Trey Johnson connected to the Jazz. The kid from Oklahoma, his name's escaping me right now.
Jeremiah Fears.
Yes, Fears, who we talked about. We talked about Jeremiah Fears a couple weeks ago. Yes.
He's remember we had our guy from the Norman Transcript on talking about Jeremiah Fears, and he was saying, I expect him more late lottery to be taken. Some mocks have him as high as 5. That was as of a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden, Jeremiah Fears
now
he's looking like a solid 5, number 5 pick.
He's like no lower than 7 now.
Yeah, it's crazy how these things, just like you made the comparison with the NFL Draft Combine, the NBA Draft Combine with Josh just now, it's the same kind of thing with how guys can fly up the draft boards well after the last game was played.
By the way, I pulled up some numbers from the NBA Scouting Combine.
Okay.
Who do you think, or how heavy do you think the heaviest guy was at the NBA Scouting Combine?
275.
You're very close, James.
I'm weirdly good at getting close on these games we play.
If we went by Price is Right rules, you would consistently lose because you always go over
274.
262.
262. Yeah. Good thing we're not playing Price is Right. Dang.
Or are we?
Oh.
You just never know.
Who's walking around with my Showcase Showdown? I keep losing.
Well, the prize is just James Peterson bonus points, so it doesn't really it's not. You can just hand those to yourself anytime. But yeah, it's
touche.
I mean, obviously they're apples and oranges. NBA Scouting Combine, NFL Scouting Combine, it's totally different. The measurements, but you're just like, I mean, you see a 37.5-inch vertical, you're like, woo, and then you realize everyone at the NBA Scouting Combine does that. Everyone.
Yeah, it's the combines that start with a 4 and higher that seem to be the top of the top.
If you're jumping 40 plus at the NFL Scouting Combine, you're a defensive back or a wide receiver, period. Nobody else can do that. It's just those freaks. And
imagine a defensive lineman that can jump that high, though, batting every ball down.
Even then,
it's the timing right.
Even then, it's like one guy per year going over 40 on his vertical, and that there's a handful at the NBA Scouting Combine, and then everyone's at like 36 plus inches. That's 3 feet, people.
I'm more like Gordy Chiesa. Can't even. I feel good when I can jump over a phone book. So can't relate.
1624. Can someone please explain what the big deal with Dylan Harper is? He's a point guard that can't shoot. Congrats, you have a taller John Wall. Here's the thing, all right? NBA coaches, NFL coaches, college coaches at the highest level, Major League Baseball coaches probably, maybe NHL coaches, they have one thing in common. They believe they can do better than the guy before them. Every one of them thinks that. It's you have to believe it, but it's also something that pains you. It's also a reason why sometimes you draft the wrong guy, because there are so many coaches. It's sometimes why the wrong guy transfers into your program, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone thinks the problems he has now, he will not have with me. I will coach this out of him. I can fix this. I promise you there are a ton of coaches that are looking. There's probably 30 coaches that are looking at Dylan Harper, and they're saying, he will shoot better with us. I will put him in the gym with our shooting coach. I will make him better at this. I'll improve his stroke. I'll improve his release. I'll improve the way he sets his feet. I'll improve his recognition of what's a good shot and a bad shot. They all think they're the best at it. Even if I don't share quite so strongly your criticisms of Dylan Harper, you can answer that question, what's the big deal with him? With any time somebody has traits, coaches are like, let's take him. I will make him good at this. I can make anybody good at this. Sometimes it's true.
Can't teach tall.
You can't teach tall.
That one drove me nuts growing up playing basketball, because there was the amount of really tall kids who were too tall for their age. They had no coordination, so they were bad at basketball that got opportunities. Meanwhile, people who were a little bit shorter than them, had some coordination, had some basketball skill, always got overlooked unless they were truly the best of the group. So Yeah, that one always drove me nuts. You can't teach tall. That guy's in 6th grade. He's 6 feet tall. We got to take him.
I remember the very first college level football camp I went to, thinking I'm going to play so well, I'm going to get a bunch of offers. This is going to be amazing. Because I was a pretty big high school kid. I haven't bloomed since then, but I was over 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds when I was 16 years old. That's pretty big. So I thought, I'm going to get scholarships, right? We went, a bunch of guys on my team, really good players. A bunch of guys on these other teams, really good players. At this camp, it was at Southern Utah University, James. The only person that the coaches were paying any attention to at all was this random dude. I think he was from Tooele High School. I can't remember what high school he was from. He wasn't even playing. He was injured or something, but he was 6'5". And so he was at he was built like you're supposed to be built, as a tight end or a D end. And he was just walking around in street clothes, and all the coaches were just slobbering over that kid. He wasn't even playing. And I was just like, what? This kid sucks. Maybe he was good. I don't know. He didn't play because he was hurt. I'm over there look at me. I can play. It's wild how traits matter so much. And by the way, did we go over the random conversation that I had with my wife when we were trying to figure out how many 7-foot tall individuals there are?
I don't think so.
Okay. This was wild. I think it was we were just watching playoff basketball, and we were having this conversation just wow, if you are built like that, the wingspans on these guys, go to the NBA scouting combine results, and the wingspans on these guys, if you're 6'5", you have a 6'10" wingspan. It's nuts. Some of them even more than that. I think the largest, there were 2 wingspans measured at 7 feet 6 inches at this scouting combine, right? And Wembanyama's got 8 feet or something insane. So anyway, we were looking this up, and yeah, I know Google isn't always 100% accurate, but I'm going to tell you when we come back, based on this conversation we just had about traits and the NBA scouting combine and stuff, the number of estimated 7-footers in the world and in the United States, I promise you're going to guess wrong. Text in right now, 877-353-0700. Tweet at me at RealOCSports. Don't cheat. Don't Google. Just throw out a number. How many 7-footers you think there are in the USA and in the world. I promise you're going to get it wrong. And then we'll talk about it next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, listen up, everybody. Summer is upon us, and now is the time. You're going to be out on the boat. You're going to be out on the golf course. You're going to be out mowing the lawn. You're probably trying to look your best right now. By all means, eat right, do the workouts. But if that's not enough, make sure you stop by the Steel Vault, one of Utah's premier medical spas, smack dab in the middle of the valley, right in Holiday. They've got it all. Testosterone replacement, hormone therapy, everything you need to get looking your best. Maybe the hairline. You can't wear the hat all summer long, fellas. You just can't. They can fix the hairline. They can get the extra weight off around that midsection. Get ready for pool season with our friends at the Steel Vault. If that sun has damaged the skin, make sure that you get the sunscreen on it this year. But also, go to the Steel Vault, and they will help undo some of the damage that you did these last years before you really started to pay attention and wanted to fight against aging. Maybe you just want to better your overall health. Maybe it's not even a cosmetic thing for you. You want to sleep better. You want your libido to be better. It is a one-stop shop right in the heart of Holiday at the Steel Vault. Tell them OC sent you when you make your appointment. You can go to thesteelvault.com, click the big Book Now button, make an appointment. Go to 801-877-9976 to book your first consultation. You can do it online. You can do it over the phone. Just make sure that you do it. Don't waste any time. You've got an entire summer in front of you. You need to look your best. You need to feel your best. You got to keep up with the kids. They're getting out of school. That means it's on you. It's on us to make sure they have great experiences during the summer. A lot easier for you to do that if you're feeling your best. You want to feel your best? Go to the Steel Vault. They'll take care of whatever your needs are. SteelVault.com or 801-877-9976 and tell them OC sent you. All right. Before the break, James, did you tell the truth? Did you Google during the break?
I did not.
Okay. Off the top of your head.
My hands up. I'm still not Googling.
Okay. Off the top of your head, how many 7-footers do you think there are in the USA? Well, let's start with the NBA. How many 7-foot players are there in today's NBA? Not counting
200
7-foot players in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
There are 39 7-footers in the NBA right now.
Total overestimation. See, that's a rare miss for me. I'm usually a lot closer on this. Okay, 39. So in the United States, I'm gonna stick with 200.
Okay. I asked for people to text in randomly. 8431 says 372 in the USA.
Okay, I say 370. No, sorry.
6816 says 50 in the USA, 200 in the world. Okay. Like, this is one of those things. We're just not good at estimating.
Yeah, we're not.
Because it's such a weird, like, how many 7-footers do you know personally?
Yeah, I don't think I know any 7. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know any 7-footers.
Like, you know who they are by watching them play for a team that you like.
I don't know anybody on the Jazz personally. I was about to say, like, I've had conversations with Jazz players, but I don't know any of them personally, so I would say I don't know any 7-footers.
I know one 7-footer personally. He's a former UFC fighter. His name's Stefan Struve, and I'm not entirely convinced he's actually a full 7 feet tall. He might be more like 6'10 and a half, 6'11". They list him at 7 foot. A lot of times athletes will embellish when they're close to something like that.
When you Google it, he's gonna count as a 7-footer. Absolutely.
And look,
so we'll count him.
He's absolutely the man. He's the coolest guy in the world. I've had fun working with him. We've become friends. He's great, right?
But you're also maybe calling him a liar.
He's also maybe a liar. But, like, that's one. And by the way, if you want to find 7-footers, go to the Netherlands. They're the tallest country in the world.
Still wild to me that that's the case. You brought that up before.
Yeah, the Dutch, they're giants. In any case, I know one. I at least have a passing acquaintance with a lot of people. I'm talking like thousands of people over the course of my life. He's the only 7-footer that I've actually known. So it kind of defies reason to figure out how many. Okay, if I know one, because of course your anecdotal knowledge does. Like, if you're an NBA basketball player, you know a lot more 7-footers than most people do.
Yeah, I know 39.
Yeah, you might know 39. There are estimated to be. There's 39 NBA players for the 2024-2025 season, 7 feet or taller. Estimates suggest that there are 2,800 to 3,000 people in the world
Wow.
who are 7 feet or taller.
U.S.?
Of 8 billion people on the planet, the best estimate they can come up with by compiling data from Centers for Disease Control, census bureaus, etc., is that there's somewhere around 3,000 7-footers on the planet out of 8 billion people.
That's nuts.
In the United States, it's estimated there are between 85 and 150 who are 7-footers. And that about 70 of those men are NBA basketball age, 20 to 40. Isn't that insane?
That is insane.
When we turn on our televisions to watch these NBA playoffs, you're seeing like a non-insignificant percentage of all the 7-footers on planet Earth engaging in a sport for your entertainment.
See, I have a memory of when I was 10 to 15 years old, somewhere in there, junior high-ish age, and I'm watching Dirk Nowitzki watching a Mavs game. It's probably a playoff game. And I think I might have been at my grandma's house, got the TV on, watching probably a Mavs playoff game. And my aunt is watching with me, and she's not as into the NBA, but she's watching because everyone else is watching. And she goes, "How tall is that guy?" And I just say nonchalantly 7 feet, because I grew up watching basketball and going, being 7 feet tall as a NBA basketball player is not that big a deal. Even to me in junior high age, I realized it's 7 feet. It's not crazy. And she's like, "German giant." And I remember going, what the what? But but after that interaction with my aunt, in the years since, I've been like, you know what? She's not wrong. Like I looked at her strange because I'm like, well, there's lots of 7-footers in the NBA. Not that big a deal. But, like, that's actually the proper reaction. And now that you've given me these numbers, I feel even more so like, yeah, we should be going, what the heck? That guy is really tall, instead of going, well, he's no Sean Bradley. He's 6 inches shorter than Sean Bradley, so he must not be that tall. Like, these guys are seriously giants.
They're extreme outliers in a human population. And by the way, when you Google, you will find so many different facts and figures on this. You got to try and figure out which one's best. This 2,800 to 3,000 number estimate for the global population is data-based, and it's a very loose study, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like,
give or take a few hundred.
They're like, okay,
if
there's a couple hundred in the United States, they got a lot of big people there, and there's a couple hundred in the Netherlands because they got a lot of really big people there. I mean, there's entire countries where there's no 7-footers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Like, if we go to Thailand, James, we could spend our entire lives looking for 7-footers. We're not going to find one.
Do you think that might be one of the reasons why Yao Ming became such a star? Is because he was a 7 foot, he's still alive. He is a 7'5" man from China who isn't known for having very tall people.
That absolutely was part of it. Also, like, you know how his parents met, right?
Yeah, they're a volleyball player and a basketball player. Are they both basketball players?
They were part of like the Olympic / international sports machine in China.
Yeah.
And they were just like, you guys can date you guys. There you go. Ta-da. Look what you made.
They call that natural selection.
Unnatural selection. But yeah, it's so.
Yeah, because his parents are like, his mom might be 6'4", his dad's 6'8", so like they did that on purpose to try to get a really tall guy.
So here's the
really
thing.
tall kid.
I don't even know how we got off on this tangent, but it just reminds you how unique it is when you are watching professional athletics in the United States of America. You are watching such extreme, and not just professional athletics, collegiate athletics. You are watching like the less than 1% of the most incredible physical performers on planet Earth, and they're doing it on a television for your entertainment. It's wild. Like, it's just the way, it's just the world we live in now, that these particular people in foreign times, in like ancient times, I guess if you're a 7-footer, you just have to be the king of wherever you are. I don't know.
Think about this. Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama, both French,
Yeah.
both over 7'2".
Yeah.
Think about now that you've given me those numbers, that's got to be there can't be that many other French guys who are that tall, and they got 2 who are in the NBA right now.
How many 7-footers are there in France? That's difficult to give an exact number. Even Google doesn't want to answer that question.
There's at least 2. That's what Google says. There's at least 2.
They're like, glad you asked. Here's 2 as an example. All right. In any case.
Yeah.
Just a fascinating thing that came up because we were talking NBA scouting combine. We'll close out the show with a little crosstalk next. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up, and we'll turn it over to Spence Checketts and The Drive. Crosstalk is brought to you by Burt Brothers. Summer adventures are now upon us. Burt Brothers is kicking off the season with huge savings on auto services, deals on the major tire brands. Save big on Firestone with rebates up to $120 now through the end of May. That means you got a couple more days to take advantage of that deal. Visit your nearest Burt Brothers and drive home with a great deal. All right, Spence Checketts in The Drive coming up. Spence, we're going to test your intuitive knowledge of giant people. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
We got off on a little bit of a tangent because we were talking about Trey Johnson. We were talking about the NBA prospects and the upcoming draft and the traits, the physical traits, and how it's – anyway.
Sure.
Give me your guess on how many 7-footers are in today's NBA.
Whew. My gut tells me a lot. I'm trying to think. Okay, so let's see. I'll say 50.
39 was the number.
39. Okay.
So not a bad guess.
All right.
Price is Right rules. You're out of the Showcase Showdown, but still a good guess. You're still in the ballpark.
Get to hang out with Bob Barker.
Yes.
And the women still spin the thing, all the thing.
I went to a taping in college.
Did you really?
I love Price is Right.
I old school for sure.
Yeah, we went to a Bob Barker taping of The Price is Right, and let me tell you that the Barker's beauties were among the most stunning humans I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that tracks based off of what I witnessed as a youth on television.
Yeah,
Never had a chance to see them in person.
Wild. Anyway,
rest in power, Bob. He's passed, correct?
Yeah, he has.
The Price is Wrong, bitch.
It's Drew Carey now.
Happy Gilmore. I'm allowed to say that, James. Don't look at me.
Okay.
I watch McAfee. Okay?
All right, fair enough.
We can get away with that.
All right. So 39 on NBA rosters. How many 7-footers do you think there are, estimated, of course, in the United States of America?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, geez. I don't even know where to go with this one. I'm assuming thousands. I'll say 1,500.
The estimate is about 150.
What?
How many 7-footers you think there are on planet Earth?
Wait. Hold on. The estimate is there's 150 7-footers in America and 39 of them play in the NBA.
And about 70 of them are NBA age, are military age, 20 to 40.
Oh, my gosh. On Earth, again, my international height knowledge needs to be polished.
There are 8 billion people on Earth, by the way.
8 billion people on Earth, 150 7-footers in America. I'll say 400 worldwide.
There are estimated between 2,800 and 3,000 total 7-footers on the planet.
Okay.
Right now. And if you read further into this very, very loose study and estimate, there's also an assertion that the majority of 7-footers that have ever existed on planet Earth are alive right now.
Okay.
Because we don't really have evidence, a lot of evidence, in like skeletal records of anyone being 7 feet tall before like 1900.
Yeah, evolution, folks get taller and all the things.
Although
Darwinism.
If you pay attention to the Joe Rogan crowd, there's a lot of like belief that maybe in Turkey there was a whole race of giants. That's a fun rabbit hole to go down if you're ever just bored.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay.
Rapidly.
In any case, we were just talking about how insane it is. Like and look, in the NFL, you're talking about sort of a size and speed combination that makes them complete freaks of nature or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
It's a little bit easier to see the 7-footer, but like it's just we were talking about how wild it is, what outliers professional athletes are. Even these, 19-year-old kids are going to the NBA scouting combine. They may or may not make it, and it's just like there's 11 of them on the planet.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, no, and you and I have talked about this before. If you ever tried to play a sport, namely football or basketball, right? If you ever tried to play that and continue to play it at really high levels, if you're a normal person like I am, you run into a wall when you start playing against people that are simply just built a lot differently than you. I feel like I could always shoot, pass, and dribble with anybody. But when I went to basketball camp with pros, and it was Tim Thomas at 6'10", and Jerry Stackhouse at 6'6", and Shamgod Wells, now God Shamgod at 6'1", 6'2", and they're all bigger, faster, stronger, and longer. I mean, that's the thing. Shamgod Wells was 3 inches taller than I am, but his wingspan was much better. His hands were bigger, padded. Like, they're just built differently. Are they more skilled? For sure. But for anybody out there that's ever tried to play a sport, and you played in college, so you played with a bunch of pros, my guess would be the Nate Orchards are different, right, than the walk-ons, the special team guys.
Yeah, they are.
The Krugers built differently, right? And for me, watching Britton Johnson at 6'10", 6'11", like, I'm a better shooter than Britt. I'm probably a better ball handler than Britt, probably a better passer than Britt, but I'm literally an entire foot shorter than Britton Johnson. So whenever you run into the guys that are ultimately pros, that's when you realize how different they actually are.
Yeah.
And I used to joke around with Dennis Lindsay about this because for a number of years I lived in Sugar House, and I would get into the 24-hour fitness runs, and that was a lot of ex-college guys, some that would go to the pros and come back. They were just looking to stay in shape. And I always got a kick out of conversations I would overhear, like, oh, dude, if I just had a shot at an NBA team, and like, ultimately, when those guys decide to lock in, you can't even get a shot off, right? Like, you can't even get a shot off, let alone get buckets or make a team.
Yeah.
And so I would always joke around with Dennis Lindsay, like, hey, if you went down to 24-hour fitness with some of these guys who claim that all they need is a 10-day and you threw them in one of your practices, how would it look? They couldn't even hang for 5 minutes. Like, the pros are just different, and it's not just the skill set. To your point, it's their size and their length and the way they're built.
You could go find YouTube videos of Brian Scalabrine just demolishing people on street courts, just like they can't even dribble.
Yeah. It's a different level. Do you remember the first pro you played against where you're like, all right, that dude is simply built differently than I am? Not he's better or worse, he's just built differently. It feels different when that guy hits me or I'm trying to block that guy.
I remember watching from the sideline when it was my freshman year of college. Jared Allen, like Hall of Famer, was at Idaho State.
Okay,
if you remember this at all,
sure.
And he, at like 6'7", was playing defensive end, rushed the passer, saw that he wasn't going to get there, tipped the ball, dove and caught the interception, and then was like just the most freakishly athletic play. I was like, that, you shouldn't be able to do that at that size. And I think for me, like personally, the wildest moment was like in high school. I still feel like I was a pretty good player in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was my first or my second college practice when we had to run conditioning drills, and we're just lining up to run gassers. And I'm like a dude who I would run hard. I would try hard. And there were dudes that weighed 100 pounds more than me that were running faster than me and not trying as hard as I was.
Yep.
And I was just like, what? That's Sione Pua was 80 pounds heavier than me and could outrun me easily.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not fair. That's not a real thing.
Right.
Like, there must be something wrong. Maybe I have shin splints I didn't know about. Like, you just have to come to grips with it at some point.
For sure.
It was terrible. I played against Brian Keel in high school.
Okay,
and he dominated.
Sure.
Just destroyed all of us.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you just, you rationalize differently when you're like 17 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, yeah, he's probably on steroids or something. It's
Right.
No,
it's just different.
He's just better.
It's the Shane Gillis foreign white stand-up portion. That hit me so hard. The first time I saw it was like, it's the foreign whites, dude, because all of us white guys in America, we saw a black kid dunk in 8th grade, and we're like, oh, okay, guess I got to set picks for the next 4 years, box out hard as hell. Like, the gall to believe you can play in that league. And I'll tell you what, I don't know who TJ McConnell thinks he is. No business doing what he does in pro basketball. It's pretty remarkable. He's a 6-foot white dude that's actually good in the NBA.
My favorite are the guys that you can't tell by looking at them how different they are.
Mm-hmm.
The Eric Weddles, the Britton Coveys.
Yes.
You look at those guys. You can't tell that they are evolutionary outliers. They are aliens.
Oh, no.
They are.
Yeah, not at all. No, you look at Britton Covey, you're like, oh, does he work at a local bank and volunteer at the church? What a sweet young man. And yet he's like this badass football player.
Yes.
A lot of respect for dudes that have that mentality because I don't know, man. As soon as I ran up against pros and realized I was built different, I'm like, well, guess I've got to figure out something else to do. I'm not going to be the starting point guard for the Knicks, apparently. So now I just blab into a microphone 4 hours every day.
And you know what? MMA is now getting those guys, and when I got into it, they weren't there.
Yeah.
And now the Mies that are trying to get into MMA, they're 500 fighters who never make it past the regional scene because the freaks are now infiltrating every sport.
It seemed like John Jones was like the first elite athlete who probably could have played.
American, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so now the sport's kind of inundated with that.
Yeah, there's guys, foreign-born guys that have kind of been on that train for a few more years. But yeah, John Jones, I mean, his two brothers played in the NFL.
I need to take some notes for my pregame hit in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Because I'll be on the broadcast.
Spence is going to come be on the PFL broadcast in Cape Town in July.
Yeah, just take note of that. And we'll get some baklava shakes, and we'll...
They might have those there.
Sean, they have them in Salt Lake. You don't need to be in Greece to get one.
I think you do, actually.
There's one 2 blocks away.
But they're Greeks.
Fair enough.
All right, I've stolen 7 minutes of the drive, which was my goal today. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's Sean O'Connell Show out on ESPN 700.